Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku faced a superhuman challenge part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗵𝗵𝗲 from AO3. So let's start the video. Mitsuki saw the path her Katsuki was going down. With all the praise he was getting for his quirk, he was bound to have a big ego. While the kids, usually led by Katsuki, berated and bullied little Izuku because he didn't have one at all. If Katsuki keeps going like this, he's bound to be a big problem, probably even go villain if his ego takes too many hits, which is most likely. Inko is also looking to make Izuku more assertive and self-confident. After doing a lot of searching on the web, they found someone with a quirk that can switch parts of a person's personality and put it into someone else. This will be perfect for the two. Katsuki will better behave and Izuku will be more confident. Win-win. So the two moms drag their boys to the doctor. Katsuki being an arrogant little shit as usual. Once there they meet Dr. Tenso. He explained a few things. What was going to happen and how long until it took effect. Now, the important parts. The transfer, though painless, is final and cannot be undone or reversed. I just want to make sure this is what you want. The moms nod, already sure that this will help the boys with everything. Izuku nods hesitantly, unsure about this, but trusting his mom and Auntie Mitsuki, also wanting to see the quirk, while Katsuki just huffed, "Let's fucking get this shit over with." Dr. Tenso sighs as he places a hand on each of the boys. A light leaves Katsuki and travels through Tenso into Izuku as a light exits Izuku and goes into Katsuki. After the process is done, both boys feel tired and a bit strange. The moms thank Dr. Tenso and leave, knowing that Izuku will be more assertive and self-confident, and Katsuki will be less brash and more humble. After they get home, the moms put their boys to bed, looking forward to the next day. Inko sighs as she walks into the principal's office. For the 10 times since the transfer 2 weeks ago, Izuku has been getting into more and more fights. Well, getting into is a gross understatement. Izuku doesn't seem to get any injuries, or if he does, minor ones, while the ones he fights have lately ended up with black eyes, broken figures, hands, arms, or legs. As for these fights, there is no proof, as Izuku points out, that it was him, except for the accusations of those that are hurt. And how can a quirkless boy hunt such strong and powerful people who have quirks? But the principal had to bring Izuku in as procedure for a lecture. And with so many repeated offenses, the principal and even Inko were getting suspicious. Now Mrs. Midoriya. Izuku is a bright kid, one if not the smartest in this school, and we haven't had any issue with him before. But I'm sorry, with so many allegations and suspected fights and injuries, I'm afraid I'm going to have to suspend Izuku for a while. Inko looked over at her son. For anything, an explanation, some sign of remorse or shock, but all she got was a dismissive humph, as if he didn't care either way, as if this whole thing, the punishment, the person across from him, didn't matter. Inko sighs. "Thank you very much, sir. I'll have a talk with him," she says, bowing slightly, as she stands, heading outside, pulling Izuku with him. The drive home was quiet, as is prep for dinner and the dinner itself. Inko didn't understand. Katsuki had been getting better, starting fewer fights, being more humble and kind to others. Heck, he even tried to get back with Izuku. Izuku himself had been less stuttery, less self-conscious, more confident, even to the point of being a bit cocky. She needed to get to the bottom of this. So Inko sighs before speaking. "What has gotten into you, Izuku? You were never one to start a fight or even get into a fight with anyone," she asks, though he has a sinking suspicion of the answer. 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗲. "Let's see," Izuku says dryly, pushing his empty plate away. "Could it be the years of abuse I got for something I couldn't even help? Or could it be that my best friend started beating and bullying me because I didn't match up to his expectations? Or could it be that you put Katsuki's anger and self-image into me on top of everything else that's gone wrong in my life?" Izuku said the last bit at a higher volume than the rest and had lost its snide attitude as he went on. He watches Inko for a few minutes before standing up with enough force. He knocks the wooden chair he had been sitting on backward into the floor. "Baby, I'm sick and tired of being picked on. The bug under everyone's shoe, the butt of everyone's jokes. Those fakes want to be heroes, but they pick on, beat up and bully a kid just because he's quirkless. No, they need to be held accountable. They need to know that they can't do things like that and expect to get away with it just because they have a freaking quirk." Izuku is almost screaming now, to angry, which is not a new emotion for him. It has always been there. Every beating, burn, name-calling. Every time one of the kids took something of his and the adults did nothing. Every time he tried to do the right thing and got in more trouble for it. But this level of rage, this was new, it was raw, it was freeing. Freeing was the best word Izuku can find to describe how it felt to unleash that fire inside him, to get back at those that hurt him, who hurt others, who claimed to want to be heroes, but seemed to not know the first thing about being decent to their fellow man. who saw those weaker, who saw them lesser, different than them as someone they can take advantage of, who they could bully and beat down repeatedly. This whole system has taught everyone that they can do whatever they want as long as they have a strong physical quirk. Anyone can be a hero, that's what they tell us when we're little. Anyone can be the next All Might, as long as you aren't a quirkless, useless Deku. Izuku ended with a huff, panting, red from rage and shouting. Through this, Inko had been feeling a little scared and very worried. Where had all this anger come from? Had he been holding it all in this whole time, for 7 years? And she had pushed it over the edge by putting Katsuki's confidence in there. Had she turned her sweet little ball of sunshine into this? Done with his tirade, Izuku watched his silent mother for a few minutes before stomping off to his room, slamming the door behind him. Inko sat there, silent, digesting everything he had said. Maybe he's still adjusting to the new feelings in him. That's probably why he's acting out. Boys will be boys, she thought hopefully as she got up, fixed the chair Izuku had knocked over and cleaned up the table and food. He'll feel better in the morning. But Izuku wasn't there in the morning, or even in the evening. Thinking he was out and about working off his stress and anger, Inko fixed some food for Izuku when he got back and went to bed. The next day the food was still there, and Izuku was still gone. She called Mitsuki, who said she hasn't seen Izuku since Katsuki tried to make up. Inko was starting to get a little worried. He's a smart boy, he can take care of himself, she thought as she tried to get some sleep. The next morning there is news of a missing hero, Shimmer Wind. The news said she had gone missing on a patrol the evening the day before and hasn't been seen since. The news also mentioned that her quirk Mesmer used her butterfly-like wings to mesmerize and distract her opponents and entertain people. She was a mildly well-known hero if she remembered Izuku's comments last time she was in the news. This was worrying. Inko went down to the police station and talked to a detective in a trench coat and fedora. She explained how Izuku had been missing for a few days, how he had been acting out, gave them a detailed description of him in a recent picture. He wasn't smiling, but she left out the part of the personality transfer, as she was still holding out hope that that was not the cause of this sudden change. The detective told her they will look for him and will keep her updated. She returned home after running errands and she could tell that something was different. The apartment smelled wrong, metallic, like a lot of blood and soap had been there, and some of the furniture had been moved. Checking the fridge and pantry, she saw a good chunk of food had gone missing. By now she was feeling scared. She had been robbed. But they didn't take the TV, or any of the appliances, or jewelry, just food. Touching the washing machine and dryer, they were still warm, as if they had been used. I taught Izuku to use the washer and dryer in case I had to be away for work, she thought, but was quickly removed. If Izuku was here, why would there be that smell, and why wouldn't he still be here? Checking his room, she noticed that some of his clothes were gone, and a good chunk of his things, mainly notebooks, pencils, bags, and other things like that. She then found a note, written in Izuku's handwriting, just one word, goodbye. Slumping down onto Izuku's bed in shock, she just sat there for several seconds before she heard her phone ring. Dashing to the kitchen where she had left it, she quickly answered. Izuku, she asked. No, it's Mitsuki. Inko, turn on the news. Inko didn't like how her friend sounded like she wanted to throw up. Turning on the television with shaking hands, she saw a live broadcast. The hero from that day that had been missing for about 2 days was there. Bloody, beaten, her shimmering wings clearly broken, ripped, and cut up, with other gashes and bruises over her body and arms. But what was most surprising was that it seemed that police were putting handcuffs on her. Shimmer Wind, who has been an avid hero in the community in Mustafa, helping in children groups and orphanages, as well as many missing children cases, has admitted to child smuggling and sale. We are not sure if she is being coerced into saying these, or if it was true. The police will look into it as well as the documents that were found with her. What we are sure of is that she was tortured and will be out of commission for several weeks, and that she keeps muttering about a kid. We are not sure if it was someone held with her. All that she would keep repeating is green eyes. Green eyes. And Ko felt like she could faint. The news broadcast becoming white noise as she starts hyperventilating. Izuku's words the other night coming back to her. No, they need to be held accountable. They need to know that they can't do things like that and expect to get away with it just because they have a freaking quirk. Oh Izuku, what have I done? Katsuki just watched the news feed as police and paramedics led the hero away. The announcer becoming little more than background noise as his inner Izuku takes over. Green eyes. There aren't a lot of people with that. And Izuku has been missing for several days. But he wouldn't do this. He loves heroes. Then again, he has been acting weird since the transfer, getting into fights and beating up on his past bullies, so much so that they have started keeping away from him, hiding. This and more ran through Katsuki's mind as he tried to convince himself both that it was Izuku and that it couldn't be Izuku. But one thing was certain, this was Katsuki's fault. If he hadn't been such a complete ass, then they wouldn't have needed the transfer, and Izuku would still be his happy, heroic self, not this vigilante. So if he wanted to be a hero, he would have to save or stop his best friend. I will save you, Izuku, no matter how long it takes me. 3 years later, the floral hero, 𝗏𝗏, has been found guilty of illegal drug manufacturing and distribution and selling to minors, which has led to multiple overdoses and deaths. You will remember, 𝗏𝗏 was found several weeks ago, suffering from burns and major dehydration after missing for several days. The majority of the information used in court was, once again, found with the hero, making this the 64th hero brought to light for the vigilante Deku. Some of you would remember that Deku, who has been bringing heroes, villains, crooked politicians, and even regular people to justice for the last 3 years, has never been seen or photographed. The only description those he punishes all agree to is green eyes. No other description has been shared. This Deku has single-handedly been keeping the heroes in check, keeping them to the standard that many say heroes should all be held to. Many heroes have tried to find them to take them in, without success. After asking around, a good amount of people seem to agree with what Deku is doing, that heroes need to be kept in check, that they have too much freedom due to their titles of hero. A lot of heroes are shaping up and others are even confessing to crimes, afraid that they might be next. No one is safe, not even ranked 10 seconds. The flame hero, 𝗵𝗲𝗏, was taken last year and returned looking much like some horror movie victim. Scars, lacerations, up and down his body, broken bones, and burns over the rest ranging from 2nd to 3rd degree, as well as evidence of abuse, though thanks to his lawyers, that was thrown out as hearsay and rumor, but it is now out there, and he is under supervision from the hero community. If even our number 2 hero can be taken so easily, who can be next? Katsuki turned the television off. 3 years since Izuku went missing. 3 years and 64 arrested heroes, some just outside the gate too. Katsuki thought as he got dressed in his brand new UA uniform. He had aced the entrance exam, even saved one of the other examinees that got caught under some debris, made him feel like a hero, for all of 2 seconds before he remembered that he hasn't saved his best friend yet. But at least he's one step closer. Get into UA, become a hero, save Izuku. Grabbing an apple as breakfast, he heads off to the metro into UA, arriving minutes before the first bell and one of the first ones. He sits in his chair like a normal person and waits. But it doesn't take long for people to start coming to introduce themselves. Roboto glasses or 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 as he introduces himself as, swinging his arms wildly like a robot. Kaminari Denki, Hantashiro, Mina Ashita. Katsuki greets them all, also meeting a Shoto Todoroki, who was wearing a bracelet, a black one with 2 glowing green eyes. Merch for Deku had been coming out for about a year or so. Some called him a villain because he attacks anyone, but he hasn't killed anyone. Some call him a vigilante or a hero because he is keeping people safe, in a way heroes can't or won't. There wasn't much in the way of merch, just dark cloths with green eyes, probably words like "you're next." For the son of 𝗵𝗲𝗏 to be wearing something of the guy that kidnapped him and messed him up, spoke volumes about life at home. Should you really be walking around wearing merchandise of a vigilante? Glasses asked, waving his hands around after spotting Todoroki's bracelet. Yeah, didn't he beat the snot out of your dad? Sparky asked, confused. That man is not my father, and I agree with what he's doing, Todoroki said, shrugging, so it's true. He abused you and your family? Pinky asked, putting a hand to her mouth in shock. Before he can answer, there was a loud noise from the door. Hey, it's you, 𝗏𝗏𝗏. Everyone looked to see the brown-haired girl from the exam. I wanted to say again, thanks for saving me from that 0-pointers. The way you blasted that thing's legs making it fall was awesome, Katsuki noted, not sure how to react in the moment with all eyes on him. Good thing the teacher chose that time to appear. If you came here to socialize, then get out, said a freaking caterpillar that stood up to reveal a freaking hobo. As this was run by heroes, Izuku would have been able to tell who this guy was, but Katsuki didn't have a clue. The hobo pulled out gym uniforms from under his desk. My name is Shoto Aizawa. I will be your homeroom teacher. Now get dressed and meet in the courtyard in 10 minutes, he says before leaving with his yellow sleeping bag. The class scrambles to get dressed, not wanting to piss off the hobo any more than they already did. Once in the locker rooms, the chatter started up again. This time it was about Deku. So what do you think about Deku? Kaminari asked the room. Well, he seems super manly, standing up for what's right, but going after heroes and people the way he is wrong, Weird Hair said as he got dressed. He is keeping the heroes and people in check a lot better than the other heroes and police are, Soy-Sa said. But don't you think he might be going about this the wrong way? Some of those injuries looked really bad. Some even had to retire if they got off with light charges. He may be going a bit overboard, but there are some heroes that don't deserve the title they are given, Todoroki says, having changed but leaving the bracelet on, rubbing it like one would a good luck charm. What do you think, 𝗵𝗃𝗏𝗏? Kirishima asked Katsuki. I think you all should focus more on changing them a vigilante right now, he said. But inwardly he was happy that these guys didn't outright hate Izuku for attacking heroes or people, just his methods. Maybe he could get them to help him. They all agreed and trickled out onto the field where Aizawa was already waiting. After everyone was there, Aizawa explained that they would be doing an assessment test to gauge where they were. Standing, long jump, side jumps, sit-ups, push-ups, 50-yard dashes, everything they usually did for fitness testing, but they could use their quirks, and the lowest score would be expelled. During this, Katsuki felt eyes on him. He attested it to those on the field, but no matter what, the feeling wouldn't go away. He decided to, covertly, look around. No one on the field, no one in the classrooms. It doesn't look like it. Wait, is that someone on the roof? Katsuki thought he saw someone in a black hoodie on the roof of the building, watching him, but when he looked again, no one was there. After a second, he decided it was his mind playing tricks on him and continued with the testing. After everyone was finished, the lowest score being the pervy grape idiot that kept harassing the girls. "Minta, you're out, pack your stuff and go," Aizawa said as a few other members of staff came and dragged the boy away as they started throwing a temper tantrum. "You will get a new student tomorrow. You're all dismissed. Collect a syllabus in the room before you go." Bakugo, a word after class. Katsuki didn't know what was going on but nodded to Aizawa before following the others. After changing and collecting the syllabus, the class trickled out, but Katsuki stayed, not wanting to piss off his teacher. After what seemed like hours, the door opened and Aizawa came in, but this time he had a white rat, bear, dog thing with him. "Good afternoon, Bakugo. I am Principal Nezu, the principal of UA. Aizawa and I had a few questions for you." Katsuki was getting more and more confused, but he nodded. "What happened on the field today?" "You were distracted and looking around for something," Aizawa asked, eyes dead but sharp, watching Katsuki. "Nothing," he said, not about to say anything and think that he was crazy or scared. "Okay, then one more question," Nezu said, taking a sip from his cup that he pulled out of nowhere, before locking eyes with Katsuki, in a way that the teen felt the mammal was looking into his very soul. "What do you know about the vigilante known as Deku?" Shoto's eyes into his capture weapon. He was not paid enough to deal with this. First, he has to see if any of the new fish have any potential. But that couldn't be simple. No, he has to notice the loud one glance up at the roof where he has seen a hooded figure since they started the assessment. After, he informs Nezu, who naturally already knew about the stranger and had asked to meet Bakugo. So here they are, him, the rodent, and his student, and said rodent has to just skip right to the point. "What do you know about the vigilante known as Deku?" Nezu asked, watching Bakugo. At the mention of the name, the kid freezes, sitting up straight as if he just got shocked. "What did you say?" he asked, though it was clear he heard perfectly. "I asked, what you know of Deku?" Nezu asked again, his smile becoming wider as he pulls a tablet from Shoto's capture weapon. After tapping at it for a few minutes, he pulls up a camera feed of the roof access. Turning it so the kid can see, he explains, "This is the only shot of a mysterious person who broke into UA this morning," he says as the feed shows a kid, or short individual in a black hoodie, opening the door to the roof. Then the feed changes to the one on the roof, but there is no sign of the kid. It does only show the feed to the front of the school, so that can be explained. But they still had audio. After a few minutes, they start hearing a muffled, distorted voice, possibly through a voice changer or a thick cloth. "There you are, Kaken. Seems one of us is accomplishing our dream." At the name, the kid takes a quick breath in, eyes locked on the screen as if it was some creature he has never seen before and one that seems all too familiar. His breath becomes shaken as the feed continues. "You seem to have gotten that proud stick out of your ass. You got the better half of the transfer, but then, you always had everything handed to you. Oops, seems you might have seen me there for a second. Your senses are still as amazing as ever. But it's not time for our meeting, not yet." Here, the three could just hear the air quotes as he praises Bakugo. It seems it thinks you're clean, but we both know you're not. Not you or them. But we will meet, don't you worry. It was almost too easy to get in. I just had to borrow an ID card from a student and walk right in. For the best school for heroes, the security is too lax, almost laughable. Probably could have had more fun hacking into here. But I must be going now. I'll be watching you, 1A. Then the door opens again and then closes. The feed changes back to the staircase entrance, but all they see is the black hoodie. But for a split second, there is a flash of green as the person readjusts the hood over their head, then they are gone. Nezu clears his throat as he puts the tablet back in Shoto's capture weapon. Though the whole clip, the kid hadn't moved at all, just watched the screen unblinking as if afraid if he even blinks, looks away for a second, the person on it would be gone. "We have done some research of our own into your past and found only a few mentions of your nickname during middle school. Would you like to tell us what you know? I would rather not involve your parents." "No," the kid yells, standing up so fast and hard, he pushed the chair he had been sitting on back and into the desk behind it. Though Shota and Nezu seemed to expect this reaction, as they made no move of surprise. Katsuki's mind was racing. Izuku was here. He had been only a few feet away. He could have gone up then and grabbed him. This had been the closest he had been to his old friend in 3 years. He glanced up at the heroes in front of him, watching him. Would I be able to lie to them? Should I? Izuku has attacked heroes, regular people, kidnapped and hurt them. Telling them would help catch him faster and stop this in him before he does something he regrets. But he's done bad things. If they catch him, would they even care that he's a kid, or would they just toss him in jail? What would Izuku do if he was here? All these and more ran through Katsuki's mind as he tried to think what to do next. The rat, Nezu held up a paw, stopping Katsuki's roller coaster thoughts. Let me clarify. We know or estimate that Deku is around your age, and aren't about to put a child in jail. We want to help him. Katsuki's mouth fell open as he looked at the principal, glancing over to Aizawa, the man that had pretended to threaten to expel one of them if they didn't measure up. The tired man nodded. Katsuki looked between the two for a few minutes, trying to decide if he should trust them or not, but then deciding it was probably what Izuku would do. He sighs, collapsing back into his chair. His name is Izuku Midoriya. He's around my age. He had bright green eyes and green fluffy hair. He's always been fascinated and admired heroes. Ever since we were kids, we were friends basically since birth. But after we turned 4, when everyone else's quirks came in, his didn't. So I started picking on him. It started out as a joke, as his name, Izuku, had the same writing as useless. I started calling him Deku. Everyone was doing it, all the way to middle school. No matter how many times, or how many people told him it was impossible to give up, that beat him, bullied him, no matter how many times I did those things, he never gave up on being a hero. He never stopped getting in between a bullet and some kid, not even when he became the target. No matter how often the adults ignored him or called him a liar when he tried to tell the truth. No matter how many times I called him useless, or Deku, or to grow up and beat him, he still called me by that nickname he had for me when we were kids. During middle school, our moms took us to a doctor. He transferred some of our personalities into each other. I got of Izuku's humility, and he got of my brashness and anger. After, I started seeing what I was doing was wrong, and started being a better person, standing up to the other bullies. Stopped calling Izuku Deku. But he changed too. My anger and ego didn't really sit well with his own or his feelings of betrayal, injustice, and pain. He started getting into more fights but starting them himself, and he would win too. No one would believe a quirkless kid could beat anyone, so he got away with it for a while. I tried to get him to stop too, be friends again, but he wouldn't hear it. Go fuck yourself, Katsuki. Those were the last words he ever said to me. He hasn't called me by my name since we were maybe 3. This continued for a few weeks, then he up and disappeared. No sign or word from him. Then that thing with Shimmer Wind came on the news. Auntie Inko and I didn't want to believe it. But there weren't that many people with green eyes, and she told Yus what Izuku said before he disappeared. How he felt people should be held accountable for what they do. How they shouldn't be allowed to do what they want just because they have a strong physical quirk or even one in general. How the whole hero system was broken and teaching kids that they only matter if they have a flashy, amazing, strong quirk, which that is what they need to even be human. That without that, they weren't anything. If this world was going to be fixed, then it would first have to be broken down. Throughout his explanation, Katsuki's voice cracked and shuddered, staring a hole into his desk. After taking a few breaths to steady himself, he continues, as tears start to fall from his eyes, This isn't him. This isn't him, it's that stupid transfer. If I hadn't been such an arrogant, loudmouth, hateful brat, none of this would have happened. Izuku would not have become this and would be here, at UA, and we would still be friends. Shoto was deferentially not paid enough for this. He was not paid enough to deal with emotional hurt and warped children. He had been on the Deku case since it started and has not found anything. Neither had the other heroes on the case, even when some of them became victims of Deku themselves, bringing their illegal and morally wrong deeds to light. And some of them had been veteran heroes with around a decade of service under their belts. He and everyone had thought he was part of a group or organization, that he was someone in their late 30 seconds or 40 seconds, not some high school kid just trying to make the world a better place and find justice. But nowhere he was, sitting across from one of his students, hearing more information that he and about a dozen heroes and a police force has been able to scrounge up for 3 years. And now this mess. He places a hand on Bakugo's shoulder. Look, kid, it's okay, we understand. Emotions get the best out of all of us, especially when messed with by a quirk. We will have to talk to your parents and Mrs. Midoriya about this, but we will see about helping him. Is there anything else you can tell us? Bakugo sniffed for a few minutes before he nods. Reaching into his bag, he pulled out a few notebooks labeled Hero Analysis for the Future numbered 10, 11, and 12. Izuku was fascinated with heroes. He watched any hero, villain fight he comes across and makes notes on their quirks, costumes, tech, fighting style, and weaknesses. He wanted to study them to improve himself when he became a hero. Shoto took them and handing one to Nezu he opened another. The first page was a description on Death Arms. Shoto didn't know the hero personally, but looking at the information and detailed description on him, it seemed impressive for a kid. Shoto flipped through pages till he came on one that he was quite familiar with, Presentation Mic. Having gone to UA with him, Shoto knows a lot about him. But reading through this kid's description, his notes on Mike's quirk, his sound system, his fighting style, some of the things here he didn't even realize until months of knowing him personally. Everything any kind of specialist would need was in here. A full explanation of his quirk, along with some examples and ideas of improvement. A blueprint drawing of his system, blood type, and his weaknesses, and how they can be exploited and or avoided. Not to mention the level of detail. Mike is a spotlight hero, a radio announcer, and a teacher, but most of the stuff in the book wasn't public knowledge and or could only be collected through close observation. Moving on through the book, he came to one of him. He didn't expect this one to be as detailed, as he was an underground hero. But he was surprised yet again. Whereas Mike had 3 to 4 pages of notes, Shoto had 3 full pages, detailing his fighting style, quirk, and capture weapon. There are notes how to tell when his quirk was active when his goggles were on. No one except his fellow teachers knew that, and even then, only those he was close to like 𝗵𝗲 and Mike. The level of analysis and thinking, Shoto thought, as an all too uncomfortable shiver ran down his spine. Glancing to his desk, where 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was sitting looking through the other notebooks, he could see a predatory gleam in the rodent's eyes, and an all too hungry smile on his mouth as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 flipped through the pages. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was one of the smartest, if not the smartest being in Japan, but he was also known to be a bit scary. It took a lot to gain his attention. But judging by the smile on his face, Shoto feared what would happen if the kid that wrote these and the sadistic rodent ever met. "Thank you, Bakugo. We will talk with the other teachers about helping your friend," 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said, the smile not dropping in the slightest. Shoto did not blame the kid as he shivered looking up at the principal, before standing and bowing deeply. "Thank you, Mr. Aizawa, Principal 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Thank you," he choked out, fresh tears dropping from his face. "Go home and let your parents and Mrs. Midoriya. I would like them to contact the school to set up an appointment with me about Izuku," 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. Bakugo nodded, grabbed his bag and left. Shoto sighs, falling back into his chair. "𝗧𝗵𝗲, I know," his boss said, still looking through the books, now including the one Shoto had. "His story and these notes are troubling, but they also are clear facts that point to Izuku being Deku. But it also paints a troubling picture of the boy's home and younger life. I will leave Bakugo to you, as I will question Mrs. Midoriya and Mrs. Bakugo," 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said as he looked at the last page of the latest notebook. In the margins, there were several quotes. "Hypocrisy is the audacity to preach integrity from a den of corruption, and the last was more troubling to build a better world. Sometimes means turning the old one down." But there, down at the bottom of the page, 3 little words: "My quirk, judgment." The sun was still in the sky as a kid in a green hoodie and blue sunglasses walked along the crowded street, listening to music from his phone and headphones. But even the loud music couldn't block out the sudden but all too familiar voice that pops out. "Guilty. Guilty." Not even breaking pace. The boy moves to a nearby bench, sitting down, and hunching over, pulling his phone out and making to look like he was checking something as he glances around. Soon enough his eyes fall on a hero who was surrounded by a bunch of kids. The voice returns. "Scorch, quirk, flash flame, able to create fire from any light source. Crime, works for the mob as an enforcer, burning down shops, blaming villain attacks, causing multiple deaths." The boy sighs, another fake hero just out to make money. He pulls out a notepad and writes down the name and crime to research later to confirm their crime, and if needed, find proof to see if it warranted action. But the quirk is rarely wrong. After filling out the new entry, he looks around again. 2 claims, 2 people. He looks around before his eyes lock on a purple boy, who had been walking past the group but has stopped to put up a few of the girls' skirts. Minor reminder: quirk, pop off, uses sticky balls from his head to stick things. Crime, harassment of females of varying ages. And judging from that uniform, he was just expelled from UA, as they should be in class still. The boy thinks as he glares at the kid, how they even let someone like that in the first place is beyond me. But then again, that quirk is interesting. And in this society, that's enough to get away with anything. It wasn't often the voice is set off to kids, unless there is a good chance of them becoming worse in the future. And he did have to sometimes put the fear of God into them to change their ways, but wasn't as rough with them as the adults. Kids will be kids. Making another note, the boy stands, stretches, his hood coming down for a second to reveal dark green, curly hair before the boy puts the hood back up. It wouldn't be hard to find out about the kid. Some snooping here, hacking there. He thinks as he changes the song to HTTPS, www. YouTube.com, watch, 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗧𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗧𝗏. He continues walking to his little abandoned warehouse when he hears a news feed, marking the latest in Stain's victims. No one knows why he is doing this. Is he working with Deku? Are they in league with each other? Their partner pipes up. Deku has yet to kill anyone, no matter their crime. If anything, Stain seems bent on just killing heroes than actually sending any kind of message. The new announcers continue their little back and forth as he continues walking, chuckling to himself. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 is still going strong, but he still doesn't understand that no one will learn anything if they are dead. It's just mindless killing. Deku soon arrives at his warehouse. Inside there is a gym to work out, a workbench where he makes, repairs, and designs new support gear, a small lab for a few of his chemicals, a network set up to hide his signal and location so he can do his research, and a small kitchen. Once inside, he gets straight to work, researching the hero and student. 𝗵𝗲 was easy to find, as everything is digital now, social media. So many complaints from girls in school about the boy, how he treats them, how he seems to feel entitled to do as he likes to them, how the staff at school does nothing because he has a chance to be a hero. He will be paying a visit to this perf. Judgment was almost never wrong. Next was the hero. After a lengthy search, Izuku has 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏's financial history, along with his debt due to gambling habits that seemed to suddenly disappear after his recorded fights became more destructive. In fact, it seemed the more destruction his fights caused, the more he was paid. Izuku sighed, wishing he could say he was surprised. After compiling the evidence of both cases, it is now late, night has fallen and time to hunt. Collecting his tools, he puts on his outfit, a mix of 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏 and Eraserhead's uniforms, but instead of a mask, his is a voice changer before heading out onto the roofs. Along with the evidence, he also finds 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏's real name and home. Heading that way, he slips in by picking the front door. Once inside, he pulls out a dart, a mix of quirk suppressants and tranquilizer. Shooting the sleeping man with the dart, he binds his hands and feet for easier transport and carries him to a different building. Once there, he restrains and ·GEHEUX him to a chair, inserting an IV with quirk suppressants. The hero soon wakes, yelling into the gag, "You fakes are why there are so many villains. You preach goodness and caring, but you are also selfish and greedy," Izuku says, his voice distorted and morphed by the changer as he starts listing off a long line of names, dates, and ages, 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 just giving a confused look. "I bet you don't even know who any of these are. These are the people that you killed, people that you swore to protect. But now, you threw them away once you saw the money. And you get away with it because of your titles as heroes." There is a clink of metal as Izuku picks up a blowtorch. You will get a glimpse of how they felt before they died. Flipping it on, the bright flame illuminated his face, or at least his eyes, bright green, like emeralds, and 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 knew what was going to happen, and that he was only going to get out when Deku let him. After hours, Deku exited the room. The hero had passed out from the pain, and was hooked up to a tap of quirk suppressants and bound tight to the chair, wasn't going anywhere. "Time for guest number 2, says as he cleans up the blood from his hands. Getting redressed in his outfit, he heads out to 𝗵𝗲𝗏's house. The kid had left the window open, making slipping uneasy. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 lay snoring on his bed, surrounded by pictures of women in compromising positions, upskirts, without their clothes, many of which involved his sticky balls somewhere in the picture. The evidence had not included any sign of punishment, no reprimand, no detention, suspension, or expulsion. This kid hadn't gotten reprimanded just because he had a heroic quirk. Izuku took a deep breath as he followed the same steps as he did with 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 and so many others, shooting the kid with a tranq dart and carrying him to the building, but different section. Once there, he restrained him, fixes a heart rate monitor to his machine, and fixed on a gag and waited. Once 𝗵𝗲𝗏 awoke, he tried to move but found he couldn't, tried to scream, found he couldn't. Looking around, he spotted a figure in the corner. "Hello, you sick perv," the distorted voice said. "You know, I know someone like you, though just because he had a cool quirk he could get away with anything, and so far you have, but not anymore. People like you have to understand that you have to be accountable for your actions, and not get off just because you have a quirk or a title." Look up, 𝗵𝗲𝗏 does, seeing a weird machine above him. From where he sat, it looked like a hamster wheel. He would be half right. It was a wheel, a big one that stretched from one side of the other. That is a conveyor belt, something they used in the pre-quirk times. See, during that time, people were judged with what they could do, not with some special power. People did things by hand, what we do now with quirks, with powers. This is when people, who don't have some strong quirk or any at all. Now, your quirk allows your balls to pop off your head, but excessive use makes your head bleed. That thing is going to continuously pop your balls off, over and over again, at least until you pass out. Then will restart after you wake up. Don't worry, you won't die, just wish you had. Use this time to repent and learn. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 tried to yell, move anything, but the voice just receded until he heard a switch go off, then a rumbling as the conveyor belt started up, pulling at the balls on top of his head. Izuku left after turning on the machine. It was a closed factory, with its workers on leave. No one was going to be there for several days, long enough for 𝗵𝗲𝗏 to learn his lesson, hopefully. Making his way back over to his warehouse, he turned on his television, which is hooked up to cameras in both the warehouse and the building 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 was, to keep an eye on them. He will hold and teach 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 his lesson for several days. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 he will let go in the afternoon, having told a little lie about the machine. It will shut down after he passes out from the sedatives in the gag. Minor reminder, a now ex-student of UA has been found wandering the streets of Hasu today, with his face caked in dried blood, with a folder taped to his back. Minta, who claims to have been kidnapped by Deku last night, was, until yesterday, a first year at UA High, the famous hero school of Japan, famous for popping out heroes such as All Might, the symbol of peace, and #1 hero, who is also reported to be a teacher there this year, Presentation Mike, and many more rank 20 heroes. UA is also known to have expelled quite a number of its students, especially early in their first years. But to have one that was attacked by Deku just hours later, what could this mean? Could Deku be calling out UA, or is he saying UA is part of the problem? The file that Minta had with him detailed multiple claims of sexual assault, harassment, and no visible repercussions to those actions. This could be the first mistake. Wait, there seems to be some news from the office. And yes, there is a report of multiple females, most of them being middle school and high school ages, turning up to police stations, confirming these findings, many with photographic evidence. The police are questioning Minta's middle school for more details, and they will be questioning UA as to why they would allow someone such as him to even be allowed to apply to such a prestigious and well-known center of our hero society, let alone be allowed in. This begs the question, could Deku be the hero we need? A shadow to cast a light on the truth. Meantime, somewhere in Mustafa, a man dressed as a hobo is repeatedly banging his head on his coffee table as the trench-coated detective next to him pinches the growing red spot on the bridge of his nose. Over the next couple of days, all Shoto heard was the recent kidnapping, some of them glancing at Aizawa, as he was the homeroom teacher for the hero course, before looking away quickly as not to incur his anger. First, the problem child made UA look bad for a while with the whole "oh, why did they let in someone like that in the first place?" But now the media is outside the gate asking questions about All Might and the brat. This is going to be a long day. I just know it, Shoto thinks to himself as he enters his classroom. Outside the room, he can hear his class yelling and talk about Deku. Seems some of the girls approve of what he did. Wow, only a few hours and they think he deserved that. Well, he kind of did, but might be a red flag there. Then he hears shouting. I have nothing to say about some vigilante. That was definitely Bakugo. Oh, come on Blasty, there's a Shoto. We've all talked about how we feel about Deku. Everyone here likes him in some way. Shinso said he likes him, and Todoroki even has a crush on him. Well, that's new, and another headache. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm calling bull on the grounds I can hear the blush through the door, and you're wearing his merch. That is enough. The class will start soon and Aizawa-sensei will be here any minute. Please get to your seats. Well, I guess that's my cue, Aizawa thinks as he enters the room. Okay, that's enough. Sit down and shut it. Now for homeroom. We will be doing something that will most likely set the tone for the rest of your time here. You will be selecting a class representative. The class immediately broke out into noise. Ida got everything settled down, somewhat, by offering a democratic vote. After a bit of noise and mess, Kirishima and Yaoyorozu are made representatives and vice-rep respectively. After the day went on as normal with classes, then lunch. UA, for such an important and powerful center of the hero community, they can't even handle a few reporters. Izuku thinks as he watches from a rooftop across the street. He had dropped by to see the outcome of Minta turning up. He had also heard that something might go down with UA. While watching the reports try to get past the barricade, he saw a hooded figure approach it, press his hand to the metal. As soon as all 5 figures landed on the wall, it started to break down, becoming small pieces or even ash starting from the point of contact. Once the wall was down, alarms started going off as the press charged into the school. Izuku watched as the person in the hoodie strolled in under all the chaos, went into one of the buildings and after a few seconds, walked back out slipping a slip of paper into his jacket pocket. Guilty, the voice practically yelled into his mind. Tenko Shimura quirk, decay, crime, murder. Should have figured it be you, Tenko. Not sure why you go by Tamura or what you have planned, but it's not going to work out as you hope. Izuku thinks as the memory of Tamura trying to recruit Deku into the league flashed across his mind. Still making destruction just because you're a pouty child and you sensei told you. He sighs as he watches the window as kids scream and run, pressing against each other to get out. Before they suddenly stopped, seems like someone in there has a brain enough to call everyone down. With everything handled, Izuku head out to his warehouse to research the UA field trip schedule, finding a USJ trip in a few days. After a bit of thinking, he decides to send a little message to send a message with Scorch. Shoto just got done dealing with the media that somehow got past the gate when his phone rang. Hello, Eraser, it's Tsukachi. Listen, we found Scorch. Apparently he was caught around the same time as that Minta kid. But the thing is, he said he has a message for UA. The detective said. From? Shoto asked, hoping he was wrong, but the oncoming headache seemed to suggest otherwise. Deku. Scorch says Deku said that something might happen during the USJ trip. the detective sounding just as tired as Shoto felt. This was going to be another talk with the rodent and the kid. "Thanks, 𝗧𝗵𝗲," he said, hanging up before sending a message to Nezu to set up a meeting after school with Bakugo. After school, Bakugo stayed in his seat, Aizawa saying that he had news about Deku. He waited a few minutes before the door opened and in walked Aizawa with Nezu on his shoulder. "What happened now?" Nezu sat down on Shoto's desk as the hobo sat in the chair. "A detective I work with says one of Deku's marks had a message about UA. According to Deku, something might be going to happen on the trip in a few days, something bad. Is there any chance that Deku might lie or be wrong?" Katsuki thought for a minute. The Izuku he knew would never lie, wouldn't even hide anything from his mom, not even a surprise party, and that Izuku was almost never wrong. But he didn't know this Izuku or Deku. But he trusted Izuku, and Katsuki believed he was still in there somewhere. He had to. No, if Izuku says something might happen, then it probably will. "What's the plan?" The adults shared a look and nodded. "We were planning on just having 3 teachers there, but now we will be putting in a few backup plans. If Nezu doesn't hear back from us or hears that we are fine, at certain times, he will send out backup," Aizawa said to Katsuki, who nodded, before collecting his things and heading home. On the day of the trip, Ida, who had been selected as rep after Kirishima dropped out, tried ushering the others into the bus in an ordered line and position, which did not work out the way he had hoped, given the layout of the bus, and he was talking to 19 teenagers. On the ride, the talk returned to Deku. Tsuyu, who had a habit of pointing out the obvious and stating things plainly, turned to Bakugo. "Bakugo, you seem to take the whole Deku subject personally. Is there a reason?" At this, everyone quieted down and looked at the explosive boy as he looks away. "I don't know what you're talking about. I just don't see the reason to talk about some vigilante." "Yeah, but you're always deflecting, and haven't really given your opinion on them," Ashido said, chuckling. "Is it that you know who he is?" "I don't know anything," Pinky Katsuki growls, still not looking at anyone. "No one does. He does have emerald eyes," Todoroki stated, looking at his bracelet, which he wears with his hero costume. "Okay, that's enough. We're here. Get out and get inside," Shoto said. After a few minutes, everyone was off the bus and in the building. Shoto goes over to 13, who informs him that All Might had used up his time. 13 then starts going over the dangers of quirks. When the hairs on Shoto's neck stand up, looking to the promenade, he sees a black circle appear near the fountain. After another second, it grows and villains start pouring out. The kid was right, Shoto thought as he tried to check his phone. Seeing that there was no signal, he was glad he and Nezu had set up a backup to get the others here. After all the villains had exited the portal, steam started enveloping the entire promenade, originating from the fountain. Shoto looks around until he sees a figure walking out of the shipwreck zone. The figure was dressed in all black, wearing a hood over their head. From his position, the figure seemed short, almost like a kid. As the figure approached, the sound of multiple thumps sounded, and some of the villains running from it, just to collapse. Knockout gas, Aizawa figured as he watches some of the villains stagger or sway as they try to walk or stand. The gas clears soon enough, leaving behind a decent amount of unconscious bodies behind. After the gas dissipated, another 2 figures came through the portal. One was a hulking bird-like creature with its brain exposed, and the other was a tall, skinny figure with a severed hand fixed to his face. "Hello, Shigaraki Tamura, or would you prefer your other name?" the first shorter figure asked in a distorted voice, standing in the middle of the unconscious enemies. "Deku," the other figure, Shigaraki Tamura, growled, scratching at his neck, clearly ticked at seeing a good chunk of his number already taken out. The smaller figure looked back and up at the teachers and students, and Shoto could see, even from his position, a pair of piercing, emerald eyes looking back at him. "Why are you here?" Shigaraki asked Izuku, feverishly scratching at his neck, glaring at the boy standing among about a quarter of his men. "Oh, did you come to join me in destroying All Might? All Might this, All Might that. You really can't get over this hate boner for him, don't you?" Izuku asked, turning his head to the side as if Shigaraki was some strange creature. "I do not have a hate boner," Shigaraki yelled, lunging at Izuku, who just flicks both his wrists, revealing 2 parts of a collapsible staff. With Shigaraki charging like a madman, Izuku simply slid to the side, used his staff to trip Shigaraki, making him fall and face plant into the ground, skidding a foot or 2. While he's on the ground, Izuku takes this time to use Shigaraki's head like a bongo drum and his batons as the sticks, making him several times before leaping out of the way of Shigaraki's wild swing, swinging his batons around like a recreation of singing in the rain. "Do we really have to go through with this again, Shigaraki Tamura?" Izuku asks in a bored voice. "I mean, you start some trouble, I swoop in, and we all know swooping is bad. To stop you, you try to recruit me. I kick your scabby butt. And then you have Koruji report you back home so you can pout and break more of his things. That about right, Mist Mackenzie?" Izuku asked the mist villain, who looked about as uncomfortable as a person made out of mist can get with the situation. We are running out of glasses, he mutters. Kurogiri, shut up and send him away with the other brats. Shigaraki growls as he gets up and jumps back to stand next to the monster. Kurogiri nods and opens a portal underneath Izuku, who just chuckles as he slips into the darkness, only to come out onto dirt and sand, the landslide zone where a bunch of villains was already waiting. Hey, this doesn't look like one of those hero brats, one said as they started circling Izuku. Yeah, and he has actual weapons, says another, eyeing the scabbards and bun holders at his sides. Who cares? It's one kid, and we are here to beat kids up, says another as he lunges at Izuku, who connects the ends of his batons into a staff and nails the attacker in his gut, and using his momentum, flips him over onto another villain. You want to have some fun? Izuku asks, smiling. Okay, I'll be your huckleberry. He finishes before launching himself into the fray as another portal opened up above him. Shoto didn't find much to enjoy in life, cold soba, and his siblings, but mostly pissing off his sperm donor of a father. So when he heard that he had been kidnapped by the vigilante known as Deku, who had a tendency of taking heroes down a peg, it felt like Christmas. After a few days, his father turned up again, bruised, bloody, with files detailing spousal and child abuse. Shoto had hope. But of course, his father's team of lawyers covered it up, like everything else. But they couldn't do much for the rumors that kept the knowledge fresh. Shoto didn't much care about heroes or merch, but passing a store while keeping out of the Burning Man's way, he saw a few items that were for the vigilante, and couldn't resist buying a few pieces. A black hoodie with a hood that went over the eyes with green ones, and a simple black bracelet with green eyes. He kept the hoodie stored away, and only wore the bracelet when he was away from the old man. At school, he had met a few that liked and respected what Deku was doing, even if some of them did not agree with his methods. But he couldn't get a read on one, Bakugo Katsuki. Whenever the name Deku came up, he would clam up and push everyone away. But after, he seemed to be looking out the window as if seeing something or someone that wasn't there. Now at the USJ, things were happening quickly. First, they were listening to 13. Then the lights go out as a bunch of people, villains, and come out of a portal just to be knocked out by gas from a short person or child. Now all he could only stand there watching as a kid, by all appearances, walked through the field of unconscious villains and up to he couldn't hear much from where he was standing, but he could see one thing very, very clearly, 2 emerald eyes, much like the ones on his bracelet, but much clearer and alive. He wasn't the only to see. Looking to his side, Shoto sees Aizawa stunned, as is Bakugo, who's growling for some reason. He may also be mistaken, but Shoto thinks the explosive boy might be muttering, "Why are you here? Why now?" But that was something to think about at another time. Now there were villains. They still heard some of the conversations that were going on down in the promenade. "I do not have a hate boner for All Might," could be heard yelled from the fountain. Even with the stressful situation, a few of them laughed, namely Kaminari and Mina, as a few of the students tried to make their way back to the door. Shoto, Aizawa, and Bakugo stayed at the top of the stairs, which allowed them to watch as the hand villain charged at Deku, who whipped out 2 batons, tripped up the villain, and proceeded to knock him in the head a few times before jumping back. This seemed to bring out a sudden laugh from Bakugo before they saw Deku disappear into a portal. "Okay, all of you, outside now," Aizawa said as he leaped at the remaining villains. But before they could get close, the mist villain blocked their path. "Greetings, children. Apologies for the disturbance. We are the League of Villains. By any chance is All Might here?" it said before 13 tried using her quirk on him, only to get it reversed and used on the hero due to a portal, breaking her costume apart before she could shut it off. The mist them surrounded them, sending many of the students to different locations. Shoto got dropped off in the middle of a ring of villains. As he gets accustomed to his new surroundings, he notices someone in the middle of the enemies, and taking them out, judging by the sounds of the fighting and groans. After a few minutes, a figure jumps out from the midst and landed right in front of Shoto, who quickly gets in a fighting stance, only to come face to face with a pair of emeralds looking back at him. "Hey, Peppermint Boy, you just going to stand there looking cute, or you going to join in?" the shorter boy asked. It took a second for Shoto to realize what was going on before sending out a wave of ice in all directions, encasing the remaining enemies in ice. "Nice work. At least you don't just go hog wild like your sperm donor," the boy says, looking around, having jumped in the air to dodge the ice ring. Shoto just looked at the boy in front of him. He had thought Deku was older, an adult or late teen at least, but he was short, maybe around Shoto's own age, though that could be part of his quirk. Then how could he take down such experienced heroes? "Hey, you okay there, Strawberry Swirl?" he asked. Are you really?" Shoto was about to ask, but the words wouldn't come out. "Am I a villain? No, am I Deku?" The kid chuckles as he jumps back, landing on the shoulders of one of the frozen villains. "You'll just have to wait to find out." Till then, don't be afraid of your powers. It doesn't matter where they come from, even if that's sorry excuse for a human being. It's your power, your choice how it's used, no one else. With that, Deku runs on the heads and shoulders of the villains to the shipwreck zone, leaving Shoto stunned and looking at his left hand. After leaving Freezer burned to his emotionally stunted existential crisis, Izuku makes his way to the shipwreck zone just to see the villains crowding the ship. Whistling a little tune, he pulls out a small EMP grenade, pulling the pin and tossing it into the water before walking back. Looks at his non-existent watch until it blew, sending out a shock through the water, stunning and knocking out the water-based villains. Okay, kids, come on, it's clear, he calls. A few minutes later, he sees a green frog girl carrying one purple person and a person with weird elbows off the ship as she leaps off, landing on the shore by Izuku. Interesting, she seems to be able to do anything a frog can and, hello eye-bags, you're hot. Everyone okay? Holy, it's Deku. What are you doing here? Are you with the villains? The tape boy. I had a feeling that something was going to happen, so I decided to set a few things up and come here to help, he says, shrugging. You lot should head to the stairs with the others. The pros should be here soon, he says, quickly placing a gloved hand on the purple-haired eye-bag's one's cheek before heading back leaving the others confused and confounded. Making his way to the edge of the promenade, Izuku took a look to see how things were progressing. 𝗲𝗏𝗏 had taken care of the other small fry but was having problems with the Nomu, or at least that's what Izuku thought it was with what Shigaraki has told him what they had planned the first time they had met. 𝗲𝗏𝗏 was trying to dodge the attacks from the hulking bird creature, but one hit got lucky, ramming into the hero's side, knocking him into the bottom of the stairs. Izuku sighs as he walks out of the bush cover, his staff resting along his shoulders, as he makes his way up to the trio of Kurogiri, Shigaraki, and Nomu. Well, it seems it's just the three of you left. The homely, the bad, and the fugly. Every time I try to have a bit of fun, then you have to just ruin it, you cheeky little monkey, Shigaraki says, scratching at his neck when he sees Izuku. You think you're so cute just cause you're a kid. Bitch, I'm adorable, he says, smirking through his mask. Now why don't you just walk your scabby butt over here so I can kick it again and run it back to daddy? Shigaraki growls before shouting, Nomu. Forget 𝗲𝗏𝗏, get this brat. Izuku turns and is barely able to dodge the huge fist as it comes at his face. Jumping and running up the Nomu's arm like a spider, he pulls out two knives and flipping a switch on the handles, sends a strong electric current through them. Reaching the thing's head, he impales both into its exposed brain, causing the thing to start spasming as its brain started to smoke, the creature screaming as it tried to pull the blades out of its head. This did not go over well with Shigaraki, who lunged again at Izuku, this time dropping down and kicking his steel-toed boots up right into Shigaraki's jaw, flipping him over and onto his back. Izuku sprung up, pulling a small knife from his ankle and throwing it so that it pinned Shigaraki's hand into the ground. Stick around, the fun's just starting. At the time Izuku was taking care of the villains at the shipwreck zone, Nezu looked up at the clock on the wall of the office as the other heroes in his office fidgeted in their seats. It was past time for Aizawa or 13 to check in, and Nezu feared that they would have to put their backup plan into action, as there has been no word yet from 𝗲𝗏𝗏 Head or 13 since they arrived at the USJ. I would like all of you to head there immediately. All Might, you may head there first, the rest of us will. Just then there is a knocking on the door. Enter 𝗲𝗏𝗏, out of breath and sweating, pushes the door open. Sirs, ma'am, there are villains at the USJ. 13 is down and it seems Deku is there helping fight them. Nezu nods. Thank you, Mr. Ida. All right, you heard him. Time to head out. The others nod, stand and head out the door. All Might leap out of a window and power leaps his way to the building. Back at the USJ, Izuku pulls out a revolver from its holster. These were mixed ammunition, bullets laced with quirk suppressants, tranquilizers, and only for emergencies, live ammo. He starts unloading shot after shot into the Nomu, in its arms, its legs, and its chest, but all the wounds would just heal themselves. I count 6 shots, boy. Shigaraki cackles as he tries to pull the knife, pinning him out of the ground with his free hand. I count 2 guns, boy. Izuku says, pulling the second revolver out of its holster, putting the other one back, shooting a quirk suppressant and a paralytic shot into Shigaraki's free hand and a spot just above his thigh. I think I just shot you in your ass, Izuku said, tilting his head like a curious cat. I think you just shot him in the ass, Izuku heard Kurogiri mutter, though it sounds like he's trying to keep himself from laughing. I think he just shot him in the ass. The students, and 𝗲𝗏𝗏 who had made his way up there with the help of the students from the shipwreck zone, which were at the top of the stairs, said in unison. You just shot me in my ass, Shigaraki yells as he tries to move, but can't. At that moment the front doors burst open, making everyone look up, seeing All Might standing there, ripping his tie off. I am here. Well, it's about damn time, Izuku yells back. All Might shot down from the stairs, standing next to Izuku. Okay, thought Might. That thing is a Nomu, a genetically modified being. with multiple quirks, including instant regeneration and super strength judging from those craters in the ground where he punched. So you're going to have to go all out. Thank you, young man, but you should head to safety with the others, All Might said, launching at the Nomu. Izuku sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose as he watches the blonde go blow for blow with the monster, going over and sitting down on Shigaraki, who is still paralyzed from the bullet. Get off, brat, Shigaraki growls. Ignoring the stiff villain under him, Izuku watches All Might's fight with Nomu, so it has super strength, regeneration, and apparently shock absorption. Anything else? Why would I tell you anything? You shot me. In the ass. Yes, and now you have 2 pains in the ass, Izuku stated, whacking him in the head with his staff. Why not have Korajiri report you home so you can cry about it, since it seems All Bright is about to beat your creature. Just you wait. Weaknesses. But his power-ups make him virtually. Shigaraki tried to boast, but Izuku interrupted him. Hey, hair for brains. It is shock absorption, not nullification. Beat its ass, like Indicor beats his family. For a few seconds, it seemed like All Might didn't hear him, or was ignoring him, before his attack rate speed up, knocking the Nomu back until one last big punch launches it into the air. Well, it seems you lose again. 𝗵𝗵𝗲, wanna run with your tail between your legs? Korajiri, Shigaraki yells. Izuku barely dodging a portal that sucked up Shigaraki, depositing him by the mist person, still unable to move much due to the bullet. This was not the plan. I was supposed to beat All Might. Nomu was supposed to kill him. I would have won. I would have started a new start in the hero community. I would have gotten away with it too, if it wasn't for this meddling brat and his stupid toys too. Izuku takes this moment to stand next to All Might as they face Korajiri and Shigaraki. At that moment, the doors burst open again, showing the rest of the heroes. I believe it's time for a strategic withdrawal, Korajiri suggested. Fine, Shigaraki growls as a portal opens under the pair of them. We will meet again, Deku. I'll be waiting with bells on, Izuku calls through the portal. After they were gone, Izuku looks up at All Might. You might want to get under cover before you power down, he said softly before hopping away, leaving the hulking blonde with a shocked look on his face, probably wondering how a random vigilante knew about his real form. As he exits the same way he got in, a hole in the skylight above the burning city, a memory flashes in the boy's mind. Izuku, about a year after the transfer, is standing under an overpass, having just helped distract a sludge villain so All Might can take him down, jumping out of the way from the limbs and blob until the hero arrived. Now he stands there, in a green hoodie and polarized sunglasses. Thank you for the help, young man. Those were some superb moves. Well, I have to go drop this villain off with the police, the hero says as he prepares to head out. Wait, please, I have a question, he said. Can someone, without a physical quirk, help fix the world? As he asks this, there is a puff of smoke and a hacking cough from the hero. When the smoke cleared, Izuku saw a skinny blonde man in the same cloths All Might had been wearing. I'm not quite sure what you mean, but you will need a physical quirk in order to do anything substantial. Being a hero, changing the world, anything, not to mention fixing it. It's good to have dreams and goals, but you need to be practical. The real world doesn't work like some story. The real world is. The hero starts, but Izuku cuts him off, seemingly not at all surprised by the sudden change. Oh, I know exactly how the real world is, Toshinori Yagi. The real world only cares about those with physically strong quirks, those that look good in front of a camera, while everyone else, those with weak quirks, or those with none at all, are just pushed to the side of the road or stepped on like bugs, while those gifted one can get away with whatever they want because they have strong quirks or them famous or rich or powerful, even lying to everyone about your real form, the boy says as he makes his way to the roof access door, opening it before looking back at the stunned hero. But don't worry, I won't say anything. The world can't lose its beloved symbol of peace, even if he is a has-been. With that, he leaves the roof, and the memory ends. Don't be afraid of your powers. It doesn't matter where they come from, even if it's that sorry excuse for a human being. It's your power, your choice how it's used, no one else. That's what he had said. With those few words, Deku had opened the floodgates to a wave of memories that Shoto didn't even realize he had. Ones of him and his mother, before she left the mark on his eye, in front of the television, watching an All Might interview. Children do inherit quirks from their parents. But remember, no matter its heritage, a quirk is what you make of it. You decide how to use it, no one else. Shoto looks down at his left hand as the other students group up outside of the USJ building as police ask each of them questions. Shoto standing a bit away from everyone else. With just a few words, Deku had shown Shoto his quirk in a new light, but not enough to use it yet. But he feels more comfortable with himself than he has for years. Soon it is his turn, after Shinso, to tell the detective what happened. We arrive here, and 13 starts explaining the dangers of quirks when a portal opened, bringing a bunch of villains into the central area. But the fountain started spewing knockout gas. I guess Deku set it up earlier, not sure how he got there. The gas took down a good chunk of them. Then he showed up and started wailing on the guy in charge, before he got portaled to the landslide zone. I only know because I was sent there a few minutes later when the portal guy, Kurogiri, I think, sent some of us to different places. When I got there, he was taking out the villains and had me ice the remaining villains there. He said some deeply personal things that I will have to think about. He then ran off to the shipwreck zone to help the others before facing off with the Nomu. I made my way to the others at the entrance. Deku kept the monster busy until All Might arrived. After All Might sent the Nomu flying, Deku ran off. I don't know where. The detective took notes of everything, before letting Shoto get on the bus back with the others before calling over Shinso. Shoto had left out the part of his theory of Bakugo knowing Deku. He would ask the blonde himself, having some questions about the mysterious vigilante Hitoshi had just been transferred into the class for maybe a week, and now they were dealing with real villains. This is his life now. The most they did was battle training, and talk about the vigilante Deku. Hitoshi liked him and liked his goal, cleaning up the system, making people rethink things about how they treat their heroes and other people. He would also be lying if he said the talk of those deep green eyes wasn't enticing. Then there's the attack today. Those deep bright eyes, so much different than any conspiracy or drawing made them out to be, so bright, lively, and intense and clear, looking into his own. As the kid placed a gloved hand on Hitoshi's cheek, the detective's voice pulled him out of the pool of those emeralds, before making his way over to the trench-coated man. Shinso, I would like to ask you to tell me your account of what happened. I know it was intense and you are tired and stressed, but we need as much information as quickly as possible. Hitoshi nodded, explaining what happened when they arrived, much like Todoroki's story, at least up to when they got sent to different places in the building. I was sent to the shipwreck area with Usui and Shiro. We weren't sure what to do until we heard someone calling to us to come out. We looked up and saw the villains knocked out. Usui grabbed the two of us and jumped to the land where we ran into Deku. He sent us to the entrance while he went to face the main villains. But as he left, he kind of placed a hand on my cheek, which was confusing. We went over to the entrance and watched him kick their asses until All Might showed up. Okay, thank you Shinso. You can go on the bus with the others. The heroes will be with you and drive you back to UA soon, the detective said. On his way there, Hitoshi sees the detective going over to Aizawa, who is being loaded into an ambulance with a broken leg, concussion, and several other injuries. Tsukachi groans as he makes his way to Eraserhead. Why does this have to keep getting complicated? I mean, first, he makes so much work by exposing heroes and politicians, many of both highly respected and praised, but also showing how corrupt the system. But now it seems that he has a thing for two of your students if the nicknames he gave Todoroki and the look and touch he gave Shinso are anything to go by. Erasure groans as he pinches the bridge of his nose, banging his head on the side of the vehicle. Once he was done, he laid back on the gurney, looking more tired than before. Well, at least we know a few things now. He's helping us. He's skilled with weapons and using his brain, Erasure says as before looking at Tsukachi, and he knows about All Might what? How? Tsukachi asked, shocked and confused. Not sure, just got done talking with All Might. Says he thinks the kid made a comment about his powered down form. Seems he knows more about things than we first thought. We will need to keep a better eye on them, Erasure said as he was loaded into the ambulance. Izuku was sitting on a roof of a building, his feet dangling over the side, after leaving the USJ. He had taken a few hours earlier to do a bit of hacking, collecting both Shoto Todoroki's phone number and Shino Hitoshi's. It was easy getting Shoto's, just a bit of searching through Endeavor's agency's files, putting a few fun little surprises into the system, and bring up the phone numbers. Shinso's was a bit simpler, just searching his name until he got his number. It was now a bit after sunset, and the taller buildings were putting long shadows everywhere. While searching on the agency system, he also found Endeavor's patrol schedule and route. Judging from Katy Perry's reaction, it doesn't seem like he learned his lesson. Guess I'll just have to beat it in harder. Maybe with an iron, or a blowtorch, or could just stick him in a freezer on quirk suppressants, mixed with some physiological fun. What do you think, 𝗧𝗵𝗲? Izuku looks around to see a figure standing on the roof with him, concealed in shadow. The only thing visible about the person was that they were thin, wearing boots with spikes on the sides of the soles, had protrusions coming out of his shoulders and hips, and a few pieces of cloth were waving in the light breeze. I don't see why you don't just kill them, Deku. They are just trash. These fake heroes, the greedy people that let them run around, poison fruit infecting the rest of the harvest. The figure said, their voice gravely, deep, and ominous. A sickness, which corrupts the very core of this society. Izuku sighs, having heard all this over the last 3 years. I know that, but killing them will only make them look like martyrs, heroes that were killed in the line of duty. But discredit them, show the people for what they truly are, then people see the truth, that the society they live in, that they help flourish, is broken and needs to be taken down and rebuilt. You build a system like a building, from the ground up, not putting in and taking out random parts here and there. And saving a bunch of children is part of the blueprints? The figure asked, leaning against the roof access door, still remaining in the shadows. I was bored and a scabby little shit needed a spanking, Izuku said, looking down at the streets. And if he doesn't learn his lesson, well then, I guess the back of my hand will get a workout after all. Here, Izuku turns back to the figure in the shadows, eyes burning with a small fire. Oh, and if you even think of going after any of those students, 𝗓𝗏 for any reason, I will beat you down. The figure stilled for a few seconds before starting to chuckle. I wouldn't expect any less from my student. With that, the figure sped off into the growing darkness of the city. The next few days, Shoto and the others had off of school, during which Shoto thought about Deku and his words, activating his left side every now and then, mostly to heat up his body, before stopping, but a few times making a smell flame appear in his hand before shutting it down. Each time he activated his fire, memories of him and his mother went through his mind. The two of them laughing, enjoying soba, or them sitting on the couch while the old man was away, watching movies. The day they were to return to school, the old man was out of the house, which wasn't strange, but he usually told Fumi that he wouldn't be home. During the break, Shoto also thought about Bakugo's reaction to seeing Deku, like he knew something, like he knew him. No conspiracies until I find out more. When they got back, the first thing Shoto does is go up to Bakugo before others arrive. Bakugo, what do you know about Deku? The blonde tensed, like every time the vigilante was mentioned. What does it have to do with you? He asked, a slight glare in his eyes. He said something to me at the USJ that has me rethinking a few things. Shoto glancing down at his left hand. Bakugo saw this and takes a few minutes to think. Your old man really is a piece of work, isn't he? He sighs. Yes, he is. Shoto growls, making his left hand into a fist. Stay after the bell. We need to talk with Aizawa about this, Bakugo says, Shoto nodding before returning to his seat. During homeroom, they were going through some things when Shoto's phone goes off. Glancing at it, he finds a new message from an unknown number. Discreetly opening it, he looks. Hey peppermint boy, turn on your TV. XOXOXO. Seriously confused, Shoto rereads the message. The only one to call him peppermint boy was Deku at the USJ. At the same time, Shoto got the message. Aizawa's phone went off too. He glances at it, scowling as he turns on the television. On it, they can see a Kark building and a figure in a chair, but unable to make out any features due to the lack of light. Apologies for the interruption. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, a distorted voice said as a figure appeared from behind the camera. But as it seems that someone didn't learn his lesson last time, and even with the evidence that was delivered, this person did not receive any punishment from any court or government agency. So I have decided to make the second lesson public, because I know how much he likes this sort of shit. Coming to a stop by the person in the chair, who seems to be fidgeting in it. Judging by the silhouette, the camera picks out the green orbs poking out from the surrounding darkness. So now, introductions. You may know me as Deku, the vigilante. Some call me a villain, others call me a pain in the ass or a gremlin. I know, I don't really do this kind of thing, but my special guest here has a hard-on for this kind of thing. Heck, a lot of people do, showing off for the camera, and the fans, stroking their fucking plumage like some freaking peacock. Being a hero means you're a protector, helping and saving the people, not dancing around and using your license just to destroy and use your quirks. But my guest here doesn't seem to understand that. He's the kind that doesn't care about the people, those he sees as weaker, lesser than him because he has a strong quirk, or just because he's him. You know him as the number 2 hero, the flame hero. But for me, I'll always know him as Indicor. With that, the lights come on, showing the number 2 hero strapped to a metal chair, with a ball gag in his mouth, trying to yell his head off through it. The light also illuminated the figure next to him, a short person dressed in a black hoodie and face mask, the only thing visible being his eyes, bright green. Now, you may be wondering, didn't you already catch him and teach him a lesson? I did catch him once, but it seems he did not learn his lesson from last time, and he did not receive punishment from the government about familial abuse. So now I am doing this live. Or you're thinking, but he's the number 2 hero, he can't do anything wrong. See, that is where you would be wrong. Heroes are human, like you and me. They have needs and desires, and many of them are greedy and selfish. And before you start, no, I am not Stain. Yes, I do believe that this system is so screwed up, it's going backward. But I also believe that you can't fix it by killing off heroes, just because they don't fit into your definition of hero. But they do need to be at the very least held to the same standard as everyone else, common fucking decency. And not having a higher kill count than a lot of villains. These are the names and the affiliations of the deceased. 2 columns of names started to roll up the screen, like some kind of Star Wars intro, with hero, villain, or civilian in parentheses next to their name. The list went on for a good 20 minutes, even with the list going just slow enough to catch every second or third name. After the list finished, the screen returned to Deku, who was still standing next to Endeavor. who was furiously trying to get free. As he wasn't using his quirk, it would mean he had quirk suppressants in his system, or those were quirk suppressant cuffs keeping him to the chair. Now, as I'm not a complete flaming pile of bags of dicks like my guest here, I will let him explain himself. With that, he undid the ball gag on the hero, who immediately started yelling, "You little shit, I have nothing I need to explain. I am a hero, the number 2 hero. And you're nothing more than a menace, a lowly vigilante at best. Those deaths were justified. They got in the way. Or they deserved it for being villains. I don't need to justify myself to you or anyone. Oh, does the same goes for how you treat your family? Why, your wife is in a psychiatric ward. How about what happened to your son, Toya Todoroki?" Deku asked, tilting his head like a curious kitten. "Silence, you know nothing. That woman you call my wife was weak and didn't understand that her children needed to be taught to be strong, to be heroes, to surpass all might. She also hurt my masterpiece. Shoto will be the hero to beat that blonde imbecilic smiling fool. Toya was also weak. He got it from his mother. He had a stronger quirk than me, but had his mother's weak constitution and couldn't handle it. He was just a failure, just like his brother and sister." The captive yelled, struggling against his bonds, trying to get at the other. "My masterpiece is my property, and what I do to it in order to train it is my decision, not yours." Some of the class were looking at Shoto now, probably wondering if any of this was true, or how this man could be his father, or finally seeing why the dual-haired boy was who he was. Shoto just watched the screen as Deku sighed, making ting sounds as he shakes his head, like a disapproving mother. All might this, all might that. He is just one man that everyone relies too much upon, especially given how long he's been going at being a hero. You should have just been worried about yourself instead of your hate boner for him. "I do not have a hate boner," yelled Endeavor, activating a memory of the USJ in Shoto's mind and several of the others' minds as well. "Then let's talk about your other son, the one you call your masterpiece. He is a person, and Dicor, his own person, able to make his own decisions, his own path, not just because you force one on him. He is not something you can mold however you want. People aren't something you can mess around and fuck with just because you think you own them. But I have a little present for you since you seem to love All Might so much. I've set up a little 48-hour clip for you of All Might's recorded fights and his catchphrases. Enjoy," he says, flicking a switch that turns on a TV screen as it starts playing, showing All Might engaging a villain with his catchphrase, "I am here." The clip continues through a tough battle before changing to All Might entering another villain fight, this time outnumbered 5-1 before taking them down in one punch. The clips continue like this back to back, as Endeavor becomes more and more enraged, shouting curses at the screen. As this goes on, Deku appears on the camera again. And that's all for this episode of I'm a Terrible Human Being and an Even Worse Hero. Join us next time for any other hero, villain, or other that fails to find justice. With that, the feed shuts down. There is static for a few minutes before the news comes on the screen. The class is silent, either looking at Shoto or at the television screen. Shoto himself didn't know how to feel. On one side, his sperm donor of a father was finally going to get punished for what he did. On the other, to hear and see all the bad things his father did, and hear him justify them, made him so angry. He barely registered his left side start to heat up before his clothes started to smoke before suddenly shut off. Looking up, Shoto saw Aizawa's hair waving above him as his eyes were glowing red, the signs his quirk was activated. Study hall till the bell. "Shoto, stay after, you too Bakugo, I'm going to talk to Nezu." With that, Aizawa left the room. It was quiet for all of 30 seconds before almost everyone crowded around Shoto's desk. "So the rumors are true, that he beat you?" Asui asked plainly. "What did he do to your mom?" "Your dad's an ass." "Oh my god, Deku is so awesome." Shoto was still reeling from watching that, not to mention the fact that Deku had gotten his personal phone number. He knew that his sperm donor was responsible for numerous civilian and hero casualties, but seeing that list play out on live television for about 15-20 minutes put it into perspective, and his feelings about his family shouted to the entirety of Japan. Looking up, Shoto notices Bakugo watching him with a calculating look. Aizawa came in at the bell, dismissing the class for the day. "But Bakugo, Shoto, you stay. Nezu would like to talk to you." The rest of the class start filing out, leaving Shoto, Bakugo alone with Aizawa. After the last person left, Shinso, who stayed a few more minutes eyeing the group before closing the door, Nezu popped out of Aizawa's capture weapon. "Greetings, Mr. Shoto. I call you that because I believe you might not want to be referred to by your father's name. Your father is one of the reasons for this meeting. Is what was shown true?" Shoto looked at the figures around him, their eyes watching him closely. "Yes, he tried to train my brother. He pushed him so hard that his quirk started to affect his body. But Endeavor didn't care, just kept training him until I came. Then he ignored Toya and focused on me when my quirk came in. None of us know what happened to Toya. He ran away when I was 5. Mom tried to stop him, tried to keep us safe, but he kept punishing her till she lost it and started seeing him in me. Shoto gently places his right hand on his scarred cheek. After, Endeavor had her put in a hospital. For her own and our safety, he said. He got what he wanted from her, the perfect quirk, someone to beat All Might when he couldn't. You're saying that is the only reason he married her? For her quirk? Nezu asked. Both the adults knew that quirk marriages were frowned upon, if not illegal, except, it seems, for those with the pull to allow it. We will need you to write down everything you feel comfortable with telling us about his treatment to you and your family. We would also like to talk to your brother and sister, as well as your mother if we can, for their input. Shoto was confused. People usually didn't believe it when he told them about his father. But here they are, his homeroom teacher and the smartest being in Japan, working with him, on the word of a vigilante. Yo, you believe me? Believe Deku? The two adults nod. Deku does seem to be right when it comes to crimes, and he was the one to warn us about the USJ attack. That is the other reason we would like to talk to you. How do you feel about Deku? Shoto looked around, seeing Bakugo watching him closely. I think his ideas are right. And he's doing all this for the right reasons, to help fix things, and he's not killing people like Stain. But I don't think what he's doing is right. Shoto notices the three share a look before Bakugo nods. Would you like to help us help him? Aizawa asked seriously. What do you mean help? Todoroki asked. Isn't he a vigilante? Shouldn't you be trying to catch him? His methods may be a bit over the top, but the reasoning behind it is still just, it is all because of his circumstances, Nezu says, glancing at Katsuki. His real name is Izuku Midoriya. We used to be friends when we were little. After my quirk came in, I was a complete ass and bully, especially to Izuku, just because he didn't have a quirk, Katsuki says, finding the ground more interesting than looking up at the others in the room. It got so bad. Our moms took us to a doctor that transferred some of our personalities into each other. He got my self-confidence and my anger. I got his humility and patience. No one knew how he felt, the emotions he was keeping inside. I'm the reason he became Deku. It's even the same name I called him, because his name can be read as Deku. But after he was diagnosed as quirkless, it stuck because this world and I see quirkless as being useless. He should be the one here, not me. Katsuki can feel the hot tears run down his face as he finishes. After a minute of crying, he feels two hands on his shoulders. Looking up, he sees Todoroki was on his right side, with his warm left hand on Katsuki's right shoulder. On the other side, Aizawa had his hand on Katsuki's left shoulder. None of this was your fault. Or his. We will help him remember who he is. Aizawa said. If Izuku was here, in his right mind, he would probably say something like he didn't blame you for what happened, Todoroki says before looking at his phone. Mr. Aizawa, could you turn on the news? A bit confused, Aizawa does so, in time for it to show the police giving an announcement. I repeat, in light of new evidence and multiple confirmations from accusations by civilians who have turned up at precincts all across Japan, following Deku's broadcast, we are officially putting out a warrant for the arrest of Endeavor Todoroki. Once he is found, he will be arrested and tried for multiple counts of familial abuse, negligence, and murder. The press conference continued, but the room's occupants had stopped listening, each for a different reason. Katsuki, because more and more people were seeing Izuku's point and looking up to him, he was slowly changing the system. Todoroki perhaps because his flaming turd of a father will be in big trouble, and he and his siblings were going to have to speak in court. The adults because now Izuku will have people who are afraid of him. Others that see him as a leader, someone who stands up for everyone, and isn't afraid to flip the bird to the hero society that has been around since quirks were the norm, for taking down not just some low-rank hero or corrupt politician, but the number 2 hero, a towering figure in the messed-up status quo that favors physical, strong quirks and discriminates those it deems villainous or weak, or those that have been labeled as quirkless. I want to help him, Shoto says, being the first to break the silence after the announcement of the arrest. Good. But before you go, how did you know about the police announcement? Aizawa asked, watching Shoto closely. My sister told me, he says, showing them the message from Fayumi, the same one Deku sent him a few minutes before his sisters. He knew he should tell them, but he wanted to just have this connection to himself, at least for now. Very well, you two may go, Nezu says. The two students collect their bags and head out. When Shoto gets home, night has already fallen. He finds Natsuo has gotten into their father's liquor cabinet and was already red, trying to push a beer can into Fayumi's hand as she cooked. Come on, Fum, he's finally gonna get what's coming to him. Stop fooling around, Natsuo. Dad has been captured by a vigilante again, and now he's going to jail, their sister says as she continues her work. Shoto chuckles as she heads to his room. Putting on his Deku hoodie, pulling out his phone, he goes to the messages that told him about both the broadcast. Thank you, Izuku, he sent before turning in for the night. On a roof across the street from the Todoroki estate, a small figure sits on the edge, humming to himself. He then checks his phone, seeing the new message. He sighs, bothersome freaking dandelion. He puts the phone back in his hoodie pocket as he sees someone coming. Wouldn't have thought they would have the balls to actually make the warrant, the new person said in a gravely bored, aloof tone, but the smaller figure could tell the new one was enjoying himself. The old bastard's actually going to get what he deserves. The smaller of the two chuckles. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were about to dance and sing. The taller one chuckles dryly. Oh please, how long have you known me? I just came by to say thanks for putting that fake in his place. It's what I do, the other says softly. There is a short bit of silence as they watch the traditional Japanese-style estate, listening to one of the inhabitants sing and knocking things over while another tries to stop him. You can go back now. The tall one chuckles again. Maybe. But I've been gone too long. Will they really want me back? You'll never know till you try. You're probably right as always, brat. Oh, and certain acquaintance of yours contacted me. Want me to join them. Might do it, just to keep an eye on her boyfriend. Oh, you're one to talk. Hot wings. The two take a few minutes to laugh before the taller one turns around and starts walking away. Watch yourself, short stack. You have the eyes of the world on you now. They ain't seen nothing yet. And watch your back, Toya Todoroki. The next day found Hitoshi confused and in full conspiracy mode. The first thing he notices when he joins Class 1A is Bakugo gets weird about the vigilante Deku. The second thing is Todoroki wears Deku merch. He knows it's Deku merch because he has a few himself because he feels that he is a hero to the downtrodden. A real hero. Then there was the whole USJ incident. Deku had jumped in out of nowhere and helped them, saved them. Hitoshi placed his hand on his cheek, the same one Deku had touched after getting him and a few others of the ship. Hitoshi couldn't stop thinking about the look in his eyes. He has never met anyone with that much sincerity and care look at him like that, like someone who cared. But back to the matter at hand. After the USJ, Todoroki's father, if you can even call him that, was caught, again, by Deku. But this time, he was called out on live television. All his crimes, all the things he kept under wraps, plastered on every TV in Japan, and not hours later, the police put out an arrest warrant. They actually listened to a vigilante about crimes of the number 2 hero. Now Todoroki is hanging out more with Bakugo. Bakugo, the guy is as friendly as a porcupine with the flu. Hitoshi sees how they share looks even with Aizawa, mainly when Deku is mentioned. During lunch the two sit together, whispering to each other how Todoroki keeps figuring his Deku bracelet. All of it was making Hitoshi's conspiracy instincts go crazy. Did he want answers? He thinks he's entitled to them. Does he want answers? He wants the truth. But then again, maybe he can't handle the truth. After the last class, he stays behind after everyone else leaves. Almost everyone. Once it's only the 3 of them. Todoroki sitting with Bakugo talking quietly. Hitoshi walks up to the two. Okay, what's going on with you two? They jump, not expecting anyone to still be there. What are you talking about you? Todoroki asked, blankly. Almost believable. Almost. You two have been acting weird all day, since yesterday, that stuff with Deku. So what is going on? Hitoshi asked. None of your business, eyebags. Bakugo growls, confirming Hitoshi's suspicion that it was personal. What do you two know about Deku? He asked, getting a shared look between the two. He's just going to keep asking, and getting suspicious until he finds out for himself, Todoroki says. This has nothing to do with him, Bakugo said, both clearly ignoring Hitoshi, who stands there watching the exchange. It didn't have anything to do with me either, and you told me everything. That's because the idiot brought your shitty excuse for a father into this, plastering his skeletons all over Japan. He can help. He likes Deku too. Fine, Bakugo says before turning back to Hitoshi. Sit down and get comfortable, eyebags. It's a long story. The UA Sports Fest is coming up. A voice said as Izuku sat watching police and paramedics drag Endeavor from his agency, a swarm of reporters hanging around trying to get anything from the cops or the disgraced hero. Izuku looks up, seeing a familiar silhouette, hovering in the night air next to him. Shouldn't you be with your boyfriend? He would probably want to celebrate. He asked, watching as the ambulance drives off with Endeavor in it. Guess they want him healthy when they throw him in jail. Oh, he is. He hit up a liquor store and a toy warehouse and is now drowning himself in booze as he cremates Endeavor dolls, action figures. The bird said, gliding down, sitting next to Izuku. But you're dodging the subject. What subject? You made a statement, Izuku said, dodging the subject. What are you going to do for the sports festival? I know you're planning something, Izuku's companion said. Who says I'm planning something? Izuku asked. Well, you warning UA about the attack. Then showing up at USJ to help out, kind of speaks for itself, is the cheeky reply. Says the guy who's dating someone who's basically a walking blister. Izuku chuckles, yes, but have you seen those eyes? The bird says, his wings fluttering slightly. What psshhh? Izuku says, making a whipping motion with a hand. Bitch, you're lucky you're endearing. Hawk's side. I'm hilarious and you will quote everything I say, Izuku says in a monotone voice, before both burst into laughter. Well, I got to go be a hero. Later, little green, Hawk says, taking off. Izuku chuckles as he watches the crowd bellow trickle off. He then decides to make a call. "Hello," came a squeaky voice on the other end of the phone. "Hello, 𝗍𝗍, can I call you 𝗍𝗍? I have a proposition for you," Izuku said, smiling. The day of the sports festival has arrived. 1A was in their waiting room hyping themselves up, most of them. Looking around, Shoto can see Shinso and Bakugo were deep in thought. Shoto could understand why. Shinso was still digesting what he and Bakugo had told him about Izuku. That along with the events over the last 3 years, and what has happened recently, it's a lot to take in. Bakugo, like him, was thinking about Izuku, and the arrest and pending sentencing of Endeavor, now just Enji Todoroki. The Hero Commission has suspended his hero license and are keeping an eye on him while the police put together the information they gather. The latest he's heard is that Natsuo had gone to the police, telling them everything that their father had done to their family. But that would have to wait. Right now they were being called out to the field. The class files out, looking around at the packed stadium, with Mike announcing their entrance. And here they are. The class that survived a villain attack thanks to the help of a certain vigilante. "Mike, please stick to the festival." That would be Aizawa, tired as always, though he sounds more annoyed than usual. As they squabbled, in between announcing the other classes, Midnight, who was the announcer, ref for the festival, called up the first place winner of the entrance exam, Bakugo. The blonde makes his way to the stand and the microphone. A lot of things have happened over the years, especially this year. With all the questioning and the distrust in heroes, I speak for everyone here. A few bad apples do not ruin the whole. We will be heroes that people can trust and believe in. At this, he looks directly at the camera, and Shoto knows he's looking at Izuku. We will make people proud. We will not ruin this chance. The crowd of students and audience roar in approval, and as Bakugo rejoins the class, he receives pats on the back and high fives. He and Shoto share a nod. "Well said, Bakugo. Now on to the first event," Midnight says, using her whip to point the board, where words are rolling though quickly before suddenly stopping on the obstacle course. All contestants will run around the stadium, through different obstacles, while Mike gives a play-by-play of the exercise. After Midnight was explaining the course, the students made their way to the starting gate. This seems too simple, and the gate is too small. So that is the first hurdle, Shoto thought as he lined up with the other kids. And as it turns out, he is right. Once the horn sounds the start, the students rush the gate only to get jammed up. That is, all but Class 1A. While Shoto uses his ice to freeze the other students in place and skate further and faster, most of his classmates use their quirks to leap over the cluster. And it seems Shoto Todoroki of Class 1A has pulled ahead of his peers. But the rest of his class isn't far behind. Mike calls out. After a few minutes of running, Shoto comes across giant robots, and our lead has come to the first obstacle, Robo Inferno, the same the hero course students faced in their entrance exams. Mike breaks in with color commentary. Shoto uses his ice to freeze the robots in place just as he hears a voice coming up from behind him, on your left, and a pink and yellow blur shot past him, smashing one of the robots, making it break into hundreds of pieces, knocking into the other robots, falling on smaller robots, and making a bit of a maze. Shoto's stunned for a minute as he sees Ashido in the air, with bright yellow lightning sparking around her. Once she lands, Ashido is charging ahead, with Shoto hot on her heels, making an ice slide to make him faster. The rest of the students right behind. Holy cow, Mina Ashido of Class 1A just destroyed one of the giant robots and taken the lead. But how will she fare with the second obstacle? Mike's vows call out over the paw. The second obstacle was a ravine only passable by ropes connecting platforms. Mina simply uses her acid to slide along the lines from platform to platform, Shoto following suit, using his ice to speed across. Once across the second obstacle, Shoto hears explosions coming closer, and looking back, he sees Bakugo flying across the ravine, using his explosions to propel him. The leaders have arrived at the third and final obstacle, the minefield. These hidden little boys aren't as dangerous as they normally be, but they are scary enough. But be warned, they might not be the only hidden surprises, Mike says, confusing Shoto. But he couldn't stop. Mina was using her speed and her acid to glide across the field, fast enough to miss the explosions behind her. Shoto pushes on, but is suddenly brought up short, as Ashido cries out, falling back and sliding to Shoto's feet, a glob of green paint dripping from her forehead. A paintball, he wonders before feeling a sting on his chest as if someone just punched him. Looking down, he sees green paint dripping down the front of his gym uniform. He's stunned for just a few seconds, but it's long enough for Bakugo to shoot past him. "The hell you stopping for, you idiot?" He doesn't finish, as he is thrown back as multiple green globs spring up all over his face and chest. It seems the three in front have activated our trap card. That is a special guest that has offered their services for the festival, Mike says through gasps of laughter. One, who was supposed to be hidden until the second event. Aizawa growls into his microphone. So whatever or whoever the special guest is was shooting the leads with paintballs. It took a minute for Shoto to think of a way around this hiccup. bringing up his left arm, creating a shield of flames, burning the paintballs before they even reach him as he slowly makes his ways to the finish line. Shoto and Bakugo huddle behind him as they make their way out of the field. Once under the cover of the stadium, the two jump out and charge the finish line, Shoto not far behind. And the winner is Shoto Todoroki of Class 1A, with Mina Ashido in second and Bakugo Katsuki in third. Mike cheers with the rest of the stadium as the three students come into view. All three are panting. Mina rubs at the paint from her head using her uniform, reviewing a slightly discolored welt where the ball had hit. Bakugo is growling and muttering as he does the same, taking his shirt off, reviewing multiple welts on his chest, two right over his pecs and nipples. While the three get cleaned up, the other students start trickling in, each with varying numbers of paint blots and welts. Once all the students are back in the stadium, Midnight calls them to the stage. Congratulations on completing the first stage and handling our little surprise. Here are the competitors moving on to the next stage. On the screen, names and placements appear. 1 Shoto Todoroki, 2 Mina Ashido, 3 Bakugo Katsuki, 4 Ida Tenya, 5 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗲, 6 Momo Yairazu, 7 Uraraka Ochako, 8 𝗵𝗃𝗫 Takoyami, 9 Shinso Hitoshi, 10 Tsuyu Asui, 11 Kaminari Denki, 12 Masharao Ajiro, 13 Mizo Shoji, 14 Hanta Siro, 15 Itsuka Kendo, 16 𝐈𝐵ARASH Zaki, 17 Ejiro Kirishima, 18 Kato Monoma, 19 Tetsu 20 Jiroda Shishida, 21 Kyoka Gyro, 22 Juzo Honuki, 23 Yosuwa Waste, 24 Rikido Sato. If your name is not on this list, I apologize, but you will not be making it to the next stage. But as we get the thing set up for the next activity, we have some halftime activities all of you can participate in, Midnight said. While the students all had fun playing the games, Power Loader and some ectoplasm clones were setting up a bunch of monitors and sound systems. Once everything was done, Midnight called all the contestants, moving on to the next stage. Okay, now for the next stage, we will be moving into the mock cities. You will split into 8 groups of 4, 2 groups per city, and your cities will be chosen at random. The mission is to capture the target before the other group or to be the last group standing in the city after the time limit of 30 minutes. You have 15 minutes to get your groups together before we send you off. Shoto looked around wondering who he should team with. The green paintballs still on his mind. Why those and the special guest? Those mixed with the objectives and the clear attack on Bakugo seemed strange to him. He was still deep in thought when Bakugo came up to him, dragging Shinso with him. Let's work together. You're and my quirk work well together, and 𝐈𝐵ARASH is great at hand-to-hand. We just need a fourth, Bakugo said, looking around. Hey guys, says a bubbly voice. The three turned and found Mina jumping up and down next to them. Need a fourth? Yeah, you're strong, Bakugo said, shrugging. Once the time was up, papers were handed out with the names of the cities to the groups. Shotos were given Gym Beta, but they still didn't have any idea who their target was. Maybe it's the special guest, Ashido said, shrugging. Who could it be? Hawks? Or maybe All Might? Just then, the city's pause system came on. The return of the Y-Boner. With a vengeance. The three look at each other, knowing whose voice it was. Welcome contestants, let's have some fun while we're here. On the tallest building, a rainbow sign that can be read by everyone there, and by those watching in the stadium through the robot cameras. 420 Yo LOSWAG 4JESUS, whoever you are, 1B is going to kick your ass and show 1A how much better we are. Comes Monoma's voice from a ways off. See, that would be intimidating if you were. Well, intimidating. While up at the announcer box, Aizawa gets a call. Shota, where exactly did you send them? Came All Might's voice. I'll tell you where they're not, the tired man said, smirking. Safe. While the halftime activities were going on, Izuku was setting up his room. While this, he went through the conversation he had with Nezu a few days ago. Hey Nezi, can I call you Nezi? I have a proposition for you, Izuku says into the phone. Who may I ask is this? Came the squeaky reply. I believe you've seen my work, but you can call me Super Kami Deku. There is a slight pause on the other end of the line. Before, what is your proposal, Mr. Midoriya? Well, I would first like to say that Bakugo Katsuki is a whiny little tattletale. As for the proposal, I will turn myself into UA, but I will continue my work under the supervision of the police, of course. That will be acceptable, but that can't all you want, Nezu says, accompanied with the sound of something being drank. No consequences to what I have done up to now. Be a student at UA, or at least involved in the classes and activities. Izuku listed off. And a 70-inch plasma widescreen TV. Really? With Netflix, should it also be 3D? No, that's a stupid gimmick and everyone knows it. Anything else? I want to be in the second event of the sports festival. Why? Bakugo Katsuki, Shoto Todoroki, Hitoshi Shinso, and Mina Ashido. Why those 4? Personal reasons for 3. I want to test Toshinori's protege. There is a distinct coughing on the other end of the phone. The only sign that he had shocked someone in the room. You are as clever as Bakugo says. But that is a lot to ask, even after shining a light on Inji Todoroki's crimes. The police will want to question you. Okay, I'll answer Detective Tsukage's questions. Izuku says in a bored voice. Very well, Mr. Midoriya, you have a deal. We will see you in a few days. But I will also like to stop by to ask for a design to be made to one of the buildings, Izuku said. Very well, we will see you tomorrow to discuss plans. Nito and his team of Tetsu, Kendo, Jirota made their way to the tall building with the truthfully humorous sign. They would show whoever this was in the world that 1B was the far better class, even if 1A survived a villain attack, especially with the help of a vigilante. To all competitors, remember, to win you must be the last team standing after 30 minutes, even if it's only one member of the team, or have captured the target. And targets, you are allowed to use force, but no lethal force. Midnight's voice calls out over the PA system. 𝗲𝗵𝗵 never means to kill, only maim or seriously injure, says their target from his location in the tower. Jirota, in his animal form, waves the others over. He's in there, the floor right under the sign, he says, pointing to the wall a dozen floors off the ground. How can you tell? Kendo asked. I hear the Adventure Time theme song. It's the only place that has sound. Then let's go and show the world what 1B can do, Nito said, tapping Tetsu's shoulder, copying his quirk. They then came up with a plan to confront their target. Nito got on Jirota's huge monster hand, while the others quickly ran inside and quietly as they could make their way up to the room. Jirota then threw Nito up into the air, and at the wall where he had pointed to before. As this goes on, Mike and Aizawa, but mostly Mike, were mainly continually delivering comments about the events, students, and their quirks. It seems the Class 1B team in City Beta have located their target, the special guest we talked about earlier at the end of the first event, while 1A is holding back and watching. The monitors have switched over to scenes of the city, showing the kids of 1B enacting their plan, sending one of them flying through the air and at the wall. Before he reached the wall, he pulls his arm back as it turns into metal and uses his arm to smash through the wall and subsequently the television hanging on it. The kid lands on the carpeted floor of the semi-dark room, where there is only one person there, sitting in a wooden high-backed armchair with dark green cushions. A figure was wearing a full-length and dark green frock overcoat with a cape, keeping whatever other cloths he's wearing hidden, a wide floppy brim similar colored fedora, a pair of Aussie glasses, and seemingly normal black leather gloves. The figure in the chair was sitting with one foot crossed and resting on the leg of the other, fingers resting in his lap, fingers intertwined. Once all the stones, dust, and broken electronic parts settle, the figure sighed. That was a 70 inches plasma screen TV. The figure said, their voice high, like a child's, inhaling deeply, taking off his glasses, his eyes closed, using part of his cloths to clean his glasses. The figure opened his eyes, looking directly at Monoma, with piercing green eyes. The audience and the members of UA staff that didn't know about Deku. So how can I help you? Deku has made an agreement with Nezu and UA to turn himself into the school to be included in the event with conditions, Aizawa says as the spectators started to get up and make noise and motions to go look for him. He is the special guest we mentioned earlier and will not be touched. The spectators shudder at the tone Aizawa said with the last part, before sitting down, watching the screen. You must be the great Deku. The kid that just busted into his room said, smirking. Sup, Izuku said, sitting back in his chair, fingers still interlaced in his lap. I've heard quite a bit about you, righter of wrongs, who brings the crimes of fake heroes to bear. A shadow that shines a light on society and cast a shadow on evil. Oh, you dirty brat, work the shaft. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Oh, I'm sorry. I like to dirty talk when someone's sucking my dick. Perhaps I'll just introduce myself. My name is Naito Monoma, and I'm Carmen Sandiego. Guess where I am? I'm trying to have a serious conversation with you. So am I, and I'm failing. And I'm sorry for that. It's just that I'm so agitated because this blonde little shit strolled into my room, destroyed my 70 inches plasma TV, and is trying to impress me like I'm his alcoholic father. The kid rushes at Izuku, his fist turning to steel. Izuku catching the fist in his palm, throwing his own fist at the kid, who catches it. Be a sport and fetch daddy another beer, would you? He says before kicking the brat away, nailing him in his chest, pushing him back to the hole as his friends come rushing in from the door behind him. First reach him was a beast knockoff, and the Tin Man's cousin. Izuku pulled out pepper spray and fires off a few shots at the furry, assuming that his senses are heightened when he changes. The kid screams out, putting his hands over his nose and mouth, freaking out and turning, charging through a different wall. While Mr. Eyebrows continues his charge, eyes closed and a hand over his mouth and nose, Izuku just sticks his leg out, tripping the self-blind bulldozer, him ending up sliding and rolling on the floor, before flying out the window, screaming. Izuku laughs as he flips a switch on his chair, so that it starts releasing a thick smoke that quickly fills the room. With the cover of the smoke, Izuku ran out of the hole, leaping and landing with a roll on an adjacent roof, just a few floors lower than where 𝗧𝗪's secret love child lays face down, groaning, getting up as Izuku dusts himself off. Whoa, I am glad this building was here. I would have gone splat, like a rock, Steel said as the girl and blonde idiot show up, circling Izuku. Are you real? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. You know what? Knife. The scrap metal asked before a throwing knife flashed, creating a clanging sound as it came into contact with his metal head. After a few seconds of shocked silence, the three rushed him from different directions. Izuku just chuckles, using 𝗧𝗪𝗧's momentum to grab hold of him, and spinning him fast so that he runs head first into the other two, literally for the blonde, their heads knocking together. Unluckily, one of the two was metal, so it was nap time for him, crashing back onto the roof with a growing lump on his forehead. The other boy staggering around rubbing his head as the girl got cloths lined by a metal arm and was now coughing and doubled over. Izuku takes this chance to put 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 handcuffs on her, chaining her to the roof access door before returning to scrap for brains. You may have taken two of my friends down, but I won't be defeated so easily. And able to take out pro heroes, 𝗧𝗪𝗧 never backs down from a challenge. Not when it comes to evil, troublesome, wicked, painful, iniquitous villain like you. Aw, what's the matter? 𝗧𝗪𝗧 got your tongue. Izuku stands there for a second. Wait, you were serious? You're actually gonna fight? I thought you were just somebody's hype man. I am the hype, he yells, charging again. Izuku just sighs before charging too, meeting him, and using his steel-toed boots, smashes it into 𝗧𝗪𝗧's head with a spinning kick, sending him to the ground. Izuku then puts his gloved hands together, pulling them apart as electricity starts spiking out of them. These little beauties are basically tasers, though they don't hold that much of a charge so far. Now think, what does 10,000 volts of electricity do to metal? He asks before bending down and placing his hands on the kid. It was mostly true. These were tasers, but he had dialed down the output for the match to just enough to knock them out. Didn't mean he couldn't have a bit of fun fucking with them. 𝗧𝗪𝗧's body spasms and twitches with the electric shock for a few seconds before Izuku removes his hands and the electricity coming from the gloves cuts out. With those three dealt with, Izuku opens up his trench coat, revealing a utility belt and a blood-red bulletproof vest and a utility belt, loaded with small packs, handcuffs, as well as small gadgets. He uses the grappling hook from his utility belt and flies back into his room through the hole. Once inside, he can hear the monster kids making his way back to the room, cursing and destroying walls on the way. Once the kid come in, he's reverted back to his human form. And Izuku, as well as Mike and some of the spectators, couldn't help but laugh at the effect the pepper spray had on him. His face was all red and puffy, more so than a normal person, which just pissed the kid off. Turning back into his quirked form, he rushed at Izuku, who simply slid under his hulked-out form and gave a one-fingered salute with a "kiss my ass, bitch, I'm immortal," before 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 whoop whoop woo woo whooped out as he ran, with the oversized gorilla chasing him, until they arrive at a circular domed room with several different pathways. The one behind them is sealed when a thick metal door crashes down. Welcome to the room of infinite bullshit, Izuku says, opening his arms wide. The fuck does that mean? Beastman's love child growls. It means, one day in here, 1 year out there. NANI, Shinso asked, as did the audience, Nezu having put cameras into the buildings so the audience can see what was happening. Izuku chuckled darkly, pulling a remote out of one of his pouches and pressing a button. Suddenly, small round openings open in the walls and ceilings. All around them, small barrels protruding from each, all pointing to Shinso. The furry looks at his opponent to see him slide through a trapdoor in the floor. "Bo crap baskets," he says before paintballs started raining out from every possible angle. It only took a few minutes for him to be covered in paint and welts, laying on the ground in his normal form, in the fetal position. Well, at least the worst is over. The second he said it, he wished he didn't, because no sooner had the words left his lips, straps came out of the ground, wrapping around his legs, keeping him in place as the holes in the walls started spraying some kind of foam out, quickly drying and hardening, becoming as hard and heavy as cement, keeping him in place, not even able to go into his muscled beast form. He was lucky that none had covered his nose and mouth. Could still be worse. Part of the floor opened up, and Izuku is lifted up, carrying a few things, a can of whipped cream, cherries, and a ball gag. You really had to say that. I mean, there are just a few things you don't say in front of me, and that is one of them, Izuku said as he climbed the hard foam, spraying the whipped cream on top of Shinso's head, dumping the cherries on top. I'm just saying. Izuku then pressed another button. The floor under Shinso descended to the floor below. He finishes before hopping off and heading back to his room, collecting his dropped hat and glasses. During the fights, Katsuki and his group watched what they could from a different roof, watching Deku kick the asses out of 3 of the 4. Holy crap, guys, we are fighting Deku, Mina said, jumping up and down, excitement shining in her eyes. He is so awesome. I mean, I know he's a vigilante, and beats up heroes and breaks the law, but he does them for good reasons, and did you just see that? He took them down like they were nothing. So what's the plan? 𝐈𝐵𝗃 asked. He basically took that team apart like it was nothing. And he didn't hate them like he does you. What are you guys talking about? Mina asked, confused. Nothing, and we lure him out and kick his butt, Katsuki said. Isn't that what those other guys did? Shoto asked. Yeah, but they underestimated him. We won't, Katsuki said, launching himself with his explosives up to the hole. The others following after a second, while Mina lighting up with golden sparks, grabbing onto Shinso and Shoto, and jumping into the hole after Katsuki, finding Deku sitting in his seat. All right, now that the back of my hand is all warmed up, who's first? Deku asked, smirking. Izuku, Katsuki said softly. Deku sighs. Well, just kill all the fun. Put the fun in camps, why you don't, you fun Nazi, he says to Katsuki before turning to Mina. See, Mina, this is why I can't have nice things, because Bakugan is a Baku bitch. He can't even let me keep the nice nickname he gave me when we were kids, and with all the trouble I went through to make it my new name. Deku turned back to Katsuki with a crooked smirk. I mean, do you have a brain issue as well as a personality? At that moment, Shoto shot a wave of ice at Deku, who simply backflipped behind his chair, poking his head out after the ice had stopped. You cheeky dickwaffles, you caught me monologuing. Why are you here? Katsuki asked. You know, I saw how much fun you were having, and thought I'd come out to the coast, have a few laughs, Deku said, shrugging. Is everything a joke to you? No, just you. Do you two know each other? Mina chimed in, looking between the two. Surprised Bakugo hasn't whined to the whole school about me, he says, stretching, cracking his neck, setting his hat and glasses down. But we aren't here to talk about me, I'm here to see what all of you can do. Especially you, Mina, he says with a knowing smile, before pressing another button on his remote. The ceiling opened up above them and ice-cold water rained down on their heads. I nominate all of you for the Ice Bucket Challenge. He chuckles before hopping away down the hall to the fun room, the others hesitating before following after him. By the time they reached the ROIB, Deku wasn't anywhere to be seen, the way back shutting behind them like before. Well, this is turning out to be great. He's toying with us, Shinso said. Looks like we have to split up, Mina said, looking at 4 different passageways. That's just what he wants us to do, but you're right. Katsuki groans as he takes one path. The others chose one each, the passage ceiling behind them, a sinister laughter echoing on the walls of the passages. Shoto made his way through the tunnel, looking around for Izuku. He soon gets to a huge, wide hallway with pillars along the sides, the kind you would see in a castle. Once he steps in, things started popping out from under the ground, shooting up, until they tower over him. Welcome to the Hall of Mirrors. Try to find me, Candy Cane, came Izuku's voice somewhere in the maze of mirrors. Shoto tried using his quirk on some of the glass, but with no effect. The mirrors too thick to break, and the ones encased in ice start to glow, steam coming from them as the ice starts to melt. Nice try, but they're insulated, came Izuku's voice from somewhere in the maze of mirrors. You're going to have to come in and look for me. Shoto starts making his way through the maze. Bakugo, Shinso, and I are just trying to help you. A dark chuckle comes from somewhere in the room of mirrors. The Pomeranian, help people. The personality switch must have really changed him if that's true. He told us what he did to you, and he wants to fix that. He wants to be a better person. Well, I would hope so, since he has some of my older qualities, ones he can keep. I like who I am now, even if you're breaking the law. The way I see it, you don't need to follow laws made by daft cunts, especially ones that set it so that those with physically strong, flashy quirks can be heroes, and ones that rely solely on one blonde idiot as the symbol of peace. I mean, talk about putting too many eggs in one basket. But I can understand why. Who can stand next to All Might, a man who can change the weather with one punch? Oh, maybe someone with a quirk that can erase or disable other quirks. Or maybe some quirkless useless bug, or one that is smart enough to study him, find his weaknesses, his limits, his price, because that's one of the biggest lessons in life. Show everyone has weaknesses, everyone has limits, and everyone has a price. Through Izuku's tirade, Shoto was making his way through the funhouse mirror maze, occasionally seeing Izuku's reflection there. You are right, the society is messed up, probably has been for a while. But you can't change it all by yourself. Let us help you. You have people that care about you. Shoto's voice gets a bit choked up at the end, though it doesn't get picked up by the cameras. There is silence for a few minutes, Shoto starting to get a bit agitated, sure that the walls, mirrors are shifting, rising, or going down. Oh, that's so sweet, I might just get a cavity, Izuku's voice calls out, but time's almost up for the second event. At the same time, Midnight's voice comes over the paw, echoing through the city. Only 15 minutes left, and 2 teams have passed. Who will pass? We will find out in the next 15 minutes. Hear that? Izuku asked. So I don't have time to talk, at least for now. But just know, as long as one member of your team is still free by the buzzer, you all pass. After he says this, mirrors pop out in front of and behind Shoto, sealing him in place, while a ceiling panel slides down, sealing the trap and box. As the floor releases, in an ironic twist, gas that smells of strawberries and vanilla. Shoto starts feeling dizzy, lightheaded and weak, slumping against one of the mirrors, eyes fluttering as he slides down on the floor in a sitting position. Have a nice nap. Cutie comes Izuku's voice as if from a distance as Shoto passes out from the gas. After a few minutes, Izuku pressed a button on his remote, the top went back into place and the gas faded, revealing a sleeping, drooling teen. Izuku chuckles, hopping down into the box, gently stroking Shoto's scared cheek as he looks at his relaxed face, before placing a blanket on him and heading out for the next victim. It was time he and All Might's Chosen had a little chat, as Shoto groaned, making her way through the unending passageway. She had been walking for what felt like hours in what she thought was a straight line, when in reality she was steadily going lower as the walls curved ever so slightly in a kind of winding, spiraling corridor. It had gotten to the point where she used the quirk All Might gave her to speed up, try to get through the hallway. But it only succeeded in tiring her out faster. As she walked, she thought back to how she had met the symbol of peace. It was after school had ended a few days before, and it was summer and she was preparing for the UA entrance exam. Kids and families were going through shops and stores, laughing and having fun, some talking about Deku as that is what he has come out as, and his latest victim. That was when there was an explosion. Screams, cries replaced laughs and idle chatter. Someone with an earth manipulation quirk was making the ground break open, causing earthquakes and buildings to fall apart, crushing and or trapping people inside. Heroes soon show up. They started going about creating a parameter, getting people to safety, getting visible people out of harm's way. But as she watched, she noticed that none of the heroes present were directly confronting the villain responsible, saying things like not having the right quirk or waiting for backup. Shoto couldn't understand why they weren't doing anything. Heroes were supposed to risk their lives saving people, to help people, no matter what. She could hear cries for help from inside the unsteady buildings, even over the villain's rampage. Looking around, she could see people watching the heroes in awe, except for a skeletal blonde man leaning against a lamppost, gritting his teeth. It was then that Shoto decided that Deku had a point. Many heroes were fakes, and if you wanted to change, you would have to be that change yourself, even if you had to go against the law. Rushing out from behind the barrier one of the heroes made, ignoring the cries to come back, sliding along the side, along the buildings, reaching a collapsed entryway, where she can hear people begging and crying. "Don't worry, I'll get you out of there," she calls out through the rubble, pressing her palms to the stone, and using her quirk to melt the rocks and metal, careful not to cause anything to fall. Once a big enough hole was made, allowing people to climb out and make their way to the others behind the line, with the help of heroes. As she did this, All Might decided to show up and was able to beat the villain within seconds. After the villain was apprehended, the fakes started going about getting people to the collapsed building. By then there were several in critical condition and had to be driven to the hospital. Other heroes pulled Shoto aside and started berating her, calling her reckless, that she could have been killed. "I wouldn't have had to do it if you were doing your freaking jobs," she screams at them. "All of you just stood there, with your dicks in your hands. I was just doing what you were supposed to, save people." With that, she stormed off, ignoring the people and press around her. She was still fuming as she walked through the streets as the sun was getting lower and lower. That was when she nearly ran into All Might, who came speeding out of an alley. "Young lady, you have the true heart of a hero. One that is willing to risk themselves to protect and help people, who is ready to stand for what she believes. But just looking, you will not make it far with your quirk and appearance, which is why I wish to help you. You do wish to be a hero, one that can be a symbol to the future heroes and children." Shoto is taken aback by All Might's sudden appearance but soon collects herself. Yes, Deku is right. There are so many heroes out there that have forgotten what the word means. I want to be one that everyone can look up to. Then, I wish to give you my quirk. From then, her world was turned upside down. All Might had personally trained her, working her to the bone, having her clean up trash beach. This continued until she had cleaned the whole beach, a week before the UA entrance exam. It has been a wild journey. And now here she was, facing off against someone that was a big influence of what kind of hero she wanted to be. She soon arrives at a door. Opening it, she finds herself in what seems to be a high-ceiling room meant to look like a cave with stalactites and a pool. Standing in the center, sitting on a pile of rocks, is Deku. "Sup, Bubblegum," he says. "Down here the cameras down have audio. They can see, but they can't hear us. I thought we could have a little chat while we do this. What do you want to talk about?" "One for all," Deku said, smirking. Shoto stood there, stunned. "How do you know about that? Hair for brains isn't nearly as smart as he thinks he is. All it took was hacking a few cameras and following him around, especially to Dagaba Beach." Shoto gapes. How had he figured all this out? Is he going to tell people? Has he told others about All Might? Is that why he's here? Does he see All Might as a fake because he can't be a full hero? Before you start freaking out, no, I have not, and have no intention of telling anyone his or your secrets. I'm just here to make sure you idiots don't grow up to be fake. But now, let's get started. Ashido sighs in relief at Deku's words. He may be a villain, but he does what he does for other people, and spilling All Might's secret would put the world into chaos. She launches herself at Deku, lighting up with one for all. Deku just jumped into the air before she reached him, landing behind her and sending a sidekick that sent her into the water, but it wasn't water, but warm oil. Once she gets out of the liquid, it's difficult for her to move as the oil comes into contact with the warm air of the cave. Really? Deku asked, head tilted slightly, just charging right in, like the blonde idiot. You have a brain. You can plan something. Ashido uses her acid to help slide the oil off. Is this all you have to face me? You know I have All Might's quirk and you're one man. Where you see one man, I see four. Just as Deku pulls out his remote and presses a button, and explosions are heard above them. Ashido starts freaking out and running just to be covered in a white powdery substance that starts raining down from the ceiling like snow. Taking a closer look, she sees that it's baking soda. The fuck is in the air. The fuck. There's white shit everywhere. Deku sings, spinning around in the snow. You know, I met All Might once. It was around the time summer had started and I should have been looking for high schools a few days before he met you. He saved me, and I asked him if someone without a physical quirk could be a hero. Do you know what he said to me? To someone that wanted to help, to save people no matter what. Be practical. The real world doesn't work like some story. That was when I understood. Never meet your idols, they will only let you down. But you are one of my idols. Your principles and ideals have helped me choose the kind of hero I want to be. You have done the same to so many people. They want to be heroes people can look up to, people can trust. Your actions have shown people to take a closer look at heroes. You are a hero. The figure in front of her is silent for a bit, watching her. After a few minutes, he chuckles. That's nice to hear, and we will have to see, but right now, we have the fight to get through, fag. He says what? She asked indignantly. Freaky alien genotype. He says, rushing at Ashido while she stands confused. She tries to send a punch at him. He grabs her fist and spinning her, and kicking her hard in the back, knocking her into the oil. She comes out, in time to see Deku rubbing his gloved hands together, sparks shooting off from them. Oil plus tasers equal, he says before pressing his gloves to the oil's surface, causing the current to travel along with the liquid, right into Ashido. She grunts as the electricity runs through her body. After a few seconds, Deku removes his hands from the liquid, cutting off the flow. Ashido's body goes limp as he floats in the oil. Swimming out to her, Deku carries her body back to the shore. Checking her over, he is glad she is alive, just unconscious. And then there are two, he says, heading off to deal with the purple cat. Hitoshi was walking through the hallway, trying to plan what he will do or say when he runs into Izuku. He soon comes to a room with 4 doors. Hitoshi stands there, unsure what to do, not trusting any of these doors. Welcome to our game. Behind 3 of these doors are challenges. One is where I am, so if you want to fight me, came Izuku's voice, echoing around the room. And before you try to use your quirk, I just want to say, this is a recording, you're cute but you powers are cheap. Hitoshi sighs as he pulls open a door. Suddenly mechanical hands pop out, hold him in place while others glue a pair of cat ears on his jaw, cat whiskers on his cheeks, and secure a cat tail to his gym clothes. The whole thing happened so fast, Hitoshi couldn't react, just stood there for a few minutes after the hands retracted, looking himself over, trying to remove the ears and tails, but is unable to without ripping his pants and hair, so he just leaves them. Aw, you really do make a cute kitten. Deku's voice comes through the room again. Hitoshi just sighs as he tries another door. He is able to make out a wall of multicolor fur before it comes crashing down on him. The next second he finds himself buried under a mountain of cats. He can tell they're cats because the warm furry bodies on top of him start purring and moving around to get better positions on their new heat source. Some walls come up around the mountain of felines, trapping them all in a box. Enjoy your furry blanket, I heard you like cats. Deku's voice comes on one last time before Hitoshi can faintly hear footsteps fading away. I have a red-eyed bitch to put in his place. Just to let all of you know, you have 5 minutes left till the end of the event. Comes Midnight's voice. Katsuki groans as he makes his way through the darkened hallway, signs along the walls saying things like, "It is all your fault, you did this to us, I'm just being the person you made me." All of it things Katsuki has repeated to himself every time he hears news about another hero or politician that Deku put in their place. If he hadn't been such an arrogant prick, if he had just helped and cheered on his friend instead of putting him down every chance he got, if he hadn't acted like a villain, then maybe, just maybe, Izuku wouldn't have become this. Their parents wouldn't have had to resort to messing with their personalities. Izuku wouldn't have spent the last 3 years turning society on its head, showing everything wrong with it, with its perception on quirks. He's so lost in his thoughts, he jumps as the voice of the subject bounces off the walls. And now we get down to the one that started me on this little journey of mine, Baka bitch Katsuki. I think it's about time we had a little chat. And don't worry, I've made it so the cameras can't pick up our voices. Don't want to drag our parents into this. They were only doing what they thought was right, following this quirk-heavy society instead of going to see a shrink. But then again, who would that help? The idiot would probably do what everyone did, praise your behavior in quirk and blame little, quirkless, useless Izuku. I mean, he is quirkless, and even if he has a quirk, it's so weak and useless, and he could never be a hero. Not like the great Bakugo Katsuki, the next All Might, or All Might himself, who has never lost a fight, who is the symbol of peace. So why risk putting the reputation of an up-and-coming star in jeopardy just to help a bug that probably won't amount to anything? Or perhaps follow most of the other quirkless kids and end up committing suicide. Tears started to fall from his cheeks. Those were all things he said to Izuku when they were kids, when he was making fun of Izuku's dream of being a hero when he was quirkless, when Izuku needed a friend most. I know nothing I say can ever make up after everything I've done to you, Izuku, but I will do whatever I have to make it up to you, to help you be the hero you want to be. There is a dark chuckle. You see, 4 years ago, I might have believed you. Hell, even 3 years ago, I would be down there, on my knees, bawling my eyes out, much like you're doing now, saying that you don't have to, that we can still be friends. But I'm not the same Deku you knew back then, and you're not the same Bakugo. You can say or do things all you want, but in the end, you and I both know that all this, the apologizing, the tears, are all mine. They come from my softness, my qualities. Qualities that our moms took and put into you. Qualities that made me yours and many others' weak, pathetic punching bag, a useless, quirkless Deku. One that would always come back to someone that he thought was his friend. One that could never would have become a hero. Well, guess what? Maybe I don't want to be one. Maybe I'm happy with who I've become. But this isn't you. Katsuki yells into the hallway. I'm as much me as you are you. Izuku's voice says, clearly with a smile. But I believe we've talked enough. Time for a little physical fun. The floor opened up in front of Katsuki, and Izuku rose up on a platform, wearing the same dark green coat and hat. He had taken away the glasses so that the audience can clearly see his emerald eyes. Oh, and I'm reactivating the audio on the cameras, so don't say anything incriminating. But now, I'm going to make you cry like a bitch. With that, Izuku launches a spinning kick right across Katsuki's face, sending him smashing into the wall. Katsuki slumps to the ground, spitting blood from his mouth, clutching his head, dizzy and disoriented. Izuku uses this chance to grab the back of Katsuki's head and smashing Katsuki's face into his knee hard, breaking the blonde's nose before throwing him back. Katsuki trembles, spitting out blood as he tries to stand, eyes unfocused, blood gushing from his nose. Izuku whistles as he slides up behind his opponent, grabbing Katsuki's underwear tightly, before yanking it up, hard and fast, making the blonde squeak loudly from the effects. Izuku pulls and pulls the fabric higher and higher, the elastic threatening to snap, just as the section in Izuku's hands are locked in place on Katsuki's head, forcing it back just as the buzzer sounds. And that marks the end of the second event. Great work to all teams. Assistants will be arriving shortly to all cities to collect downed and injured competitors. We ask that all traps be released so that everyone can return to the starting point. The results will be up on the stadium board once all teams are back. Midnight's voice comes from the PA system. Izuku sighs and presses one last button on his remote. The mirror walls in Todoroki's room come down, as do the ones in Shinso's. The floor where Shinchita had been secured to rises into plain view. Robotic medics are sent, collecting the 1B team from the city, frying the ones that have been secured, freeing them, and placing the unconscious ones on stretchers and carting them to Recovery Girl or back to the stadium. Once all the teams are present, or at least one member of each team, Midnight brings up the team members that move on to the final fights. Bakugo Katsuki Shoto Todoroki Shino Hitoshi Mina Ashido Ida Tenya 𝗓𝗏𝗄 Momo Yairazu Uraraka Achako 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 Takoyami Kaminari Denki Hantasiro Kirishima Ijiro Shizaki Ibara Tetsu Came in after withdraw Kendo Itsuka, came in after withdraw Monoma Nito, came in after withdraw. Congratulations to those moving on to the one-on-one fights. There will be a lunch break as the stage and arena is set up. The brackets will be set up and posted soon. Midnight announces, I suggest you rest while you can. There can always be more surprises coming your way. Comes Aizawa's voice from the announcer's box. Everyone looks confused, except for those that had been in beta. They felt a cold shiver run along their spines.